Perhaps in a time not so long ago, during the glorious age of the gods, humanity looked to the heavens with fervent pleas. To the powerful, golden-haired Zeus, they sought justice, while others with earnest desires prayed to various deities. They begged Ares, the fiery god of war, for victory to turn in their favor. To the serene Demeter, goddess of the harvest, they cried out to be freed from hunger. And to Artemis, goddess of the moon and hunt, with her silver hair and keen eyes, devout souls made solemn vows, pledging eternal seeking her divine blessing. To Poseidon, god of the sea, they implored him to guide their safe voyages. Such was their unwavering faith in the gods. Beings existed who knew not life's finite nature, who neither aged nor withered. They commanded reverence for the providence and authority they'd established. Yet, some whispered they were heartless, arrogant, and haughty. A god lived forever, was revered eternally, and never wavered from their established truths. Forever. In the ethereal, deep blue glow of the sacred forest, Daphne, a nymph whose fate was fleeting, stood veiled by a tree. Across from her, impossibly golden, a figure of unending power seemed to loom, foreshadowing their tragic collision. Apollo, who'd once dismissed love as a trivial, beastly emotion beneath his divine reason, now saw his eternal truth crumble. He stepped closer, placing his foot down firmly. "You've watched me for a very long time, haven't you?" he declared, his voice thick with possessiveness. "I know you love me." Daphne, her olive-green eyes wide with terror, struggled against his firm grip. "Lord Phoebus, I apologize, but my arm. Please, let go," she pleaded, tears welling. "I just need to return to Lady Artemis." The sun god, now rejected by a mere nymph, refused to release her. A powerful hand, once commanding and secure, clenched with a silent, unseen struggle. Because of a single, mischievous arrow from the boy god, Eros, Lord Phoebus's very identity, his proud Apollo's truth, shattered. What was once unyielding confidence crumbled, much like a grand, headless statue now stood, its base littered with fragments. His former self, his perception of love and control, lay broken to pieces. The curse had brutally rearranged the sun god's world, setting the stage for his desperate, obsessive pursuit. The morning sun bathed the sacred forest as birds flapped. Over there, a nymph called, her sandals thudding as she led the chase. "Everyone, arrows up!" urged another, their pursuit intensifying. A sharp cry slashed through the air. "It's going into the cave." The elusive deer vanished into the shadowy depths. Frustration rippled among Daphne's companions at the cave entrance. "It's hard to secure a line of sight inside," one worried, remembering Artemis's command. "We can't lose it," Daphne lamented. "It avoided all our traps. Even Macaria, our fastest, couldn't catch it. A speed battle is meaningless now." The weary nymphs were at their physical limit, their breaths ragged as they relentlessly pursued the elusive deer Artemis had commanded them to catch. Daphne knew they couldn't fail. Their goddess's wrath was merciless, and the pressure weighed heavily. A surge of fierce determination hardened her features. With charcoal black hair swaying, she raised her bow, her olive-green eyes narrowing into a sharp, unwavering gaze. A brilliant arrow, alight with an ethereal glow, fired forth, a streak of light piercing the golden forest. The elusive deer, sensing the projectile's approach, darted away in a frantic burst of speed, but the shining arrow pursued it relentlessly through the darkening woods. Macaria, breathless from the chase, arrived as the elusive deer stumbled, an arrow finding its mark. "Caught it! It's a huge deer," she exclaimed, triumphant despite her tardiness. Daphne approached with a serene smile. "What happened to the prey?" she casually asked. The other nymphs gathered, one marveling. "So it was you, Daphne?" From that distance, amazing archery skills. Daphne brushed off the praise. "It's nothing. What about the prey?" "Below," another nymph teased. "You won't even come down until you've confirmed you hit it, and you're asking on purpose?" "It's been 2 hours. Come down already." Daphne remained playfully perched. Perched in a tree, Daphne overheard nymphs discussing their return to the temple, needing extra hands because Lord Phoebus was coming. Her thoughts drifted. It felt like yesterday she left her father Peneus' home. The unwanted courtships there were a filthy, ugly mass of longing to her. This men-forbidden forest had become her salvation. Defying her father, she pledged eternal to the moon goddess, finding everything she wanted here, an absolutely perfect paradise of the moon. Another nymph's voice then mentioned a stag disappearing towards the west-east. It must have been Macare's doing. A nymph, perhaps Macaria, mused as she walked with Daphne through the shimmering woods. Daphne sighed. That darn sister. She was undeniably fast. Their talk soon shifted. What brings Lord Phoebus here today? The nymph wondered, a hint of awe in her voice. Daphne's olive-green eyes held a wary look. Who knows? How would nymphs like us know? She hadn't been here long, but she knew Phoebus Apollo was the only man allowed in their sacred, chaste land. To harbor feelings for him was the gravest sin, a violation of Artemis's vow. His very name brought palpable tension. Daphne's heart clenched, a chilling memory surfacing of Callisto, transformed into a bear and cruelly punished for losing her. Artemis, the goddess of the moon, was merciless, and her heartless judgment was a constant, stark reminder of Daphne's own sacred vow. Later, a fellow nymph spoke to Daphne, her voice filled with a knowing gravity. Since you've never seen Lord Phoebus, I'll tell you now. The day our goddess learns of any transgression, we could all face Callisto's fate. Daphne's gaze hardened. The nymph continued, insisting that Apollo wasn't just any man, that Daphne too would be unable to look away. That's a dangerous thing to say, Daphne countered, her eyes flashing with resolve. Stop. This is the goddess's sacred land. Watch your words. The nymph simply smiled, declaring, his radiance inspires instinctual reverence in everyone. You'll understand when you see him. Daphne internally declared she was sick of men, tired of their endless proposals. This sacred forest was her refuge, after all. Yet, she listened, annoyed, as other nymphs whispered about an unmatched perfection and elegance. A man is just a man, she thought, dismissing their fables that made her ears ache when Artemis wasn't around. What on earth are they thinking? Then, the name Lord Phoebus was uttered. As if summoned by their hushed reverence, Apollo appeared, his golden hair glowing like captured sunlight. His regal confidence made every nymph instinctively bow, a sight Daphne found deeply unsettling. Phoebus Apollo, a vision of pure sunlight, radiated an almost unbearable warmth, his powerful form framed by golden roses. Below him, the other nymphs instinctively fell to their knees, their heads bowed in fervent reverence. Daphne, however, resisted, her internal turmoil palpable. She recalled their sacred vow. They'd all sought this sanctuary to despise men, swearing not to give them a glance, let alone their hearts, under threat of severe punishment. Yet, as she stood before him, the unsettling truth began to surface. It wasn't Eros's cursed arrow or fate's cruel design, but Apollo's inherent allure that was truly undeniable. It was just as the nymph had prophesied. The moment Daphne truly saw him, standing before her with the sun shared a moment glory of a god, an undeniable force seized her. Apollo's golden hair cascaded around him, his piercing blue gaze holding an otherworldly magnetism. Her breath hitched, olive green eyes widening in a mixture of awe and panic. A forbidden blush crept across her cheeks. The words echoed in her mind. She wouldn't be able to take her eyes off him. This wasn't the curse. This was pure, unadulterated allure, a danger to her very soul. An arrow sliced through the moonlit forest, but the deer darted away unscathed. Below, the nymphs watched in dismay, their hopes dashed. One lamented that it was their last chance, questioning how they could possibly face the goddess empty-handed. The lead nymph coldly informed the failed archer that she would be the one to report their failure. With a sigh, she suggested the nymph ask Daphne for lessons, remarking that Daphne never would have missed. But it had been weeks since Daphne joined them, offering only vague excuses of headaches and feeling unwell. One of Artemis's nymphs couldn't shake her growing concern. Daphne had been using every excuse to avoid the hunts, even the ones summoned by the goddess herself. The nymph tried to dismiss the feeling as baseless worry, deciding to head back for the day while reassuring herself that Daphne would be fine. But alone in her moonlit chambers, Daphne was anything but fine. Curled into herself, she was trapped in a relentless cycle, as hope and despair took turns waging war within her tormented soul with every passing moment. At first, Daphne wasn't sure if her feelings were devotion or mere admiration. But ever since that day she foolishly longed for just a glimpse of him, everything had changed. The thrill of Artemis's hunt, once her greatest joy, now felt hollow and distant. Each night, she knew he came to visit his sister, never sparing her a glance, likely not even knowing her name. He would then leave to spend the night with nameless women, and though Daphne told herself these foolish feelings would fade, they never did. When his sun chariot rose, she felt helplessly happy. After countless nights of worry and despair, Daphne finally admitted her one true wish. She longed for Apollo to look into her eyes and smile at her, even if it was just once more. But her daydream was shattered when another nymph gently pushed her door open, apologizing for the intrusion. She explained that Lord Phoebus had arrived unexpectedly while the others were away hunting. Daphne, caught off guard, quietly agreed to get ready and meet him. Alone again, her resolve crumbled. She had just wished for this moment, yet she was hiding. Trapped, she wondered what she could possibly do. Her thoughts were a relentless cycle, always returning to him. When the sun rose, his golden visage was the first thing on her mind, and when night fell, a restless excitement left her lingering by the moonlight, a feeling she couldn't quell. This, she realized with a heavy heart, was simply inevitable. Elsewhere, Lord Phoebus slumped on his throne, dismissing his many attendants with a weary sigh. Though he commanded them to leave him in solitude, it was Daphne who approached with a basin of cool water, her quiet resolve hiding the storm of anticipation and dread brewing within her. As Daphne quietly finished her task, Apollo's piercing gaze lingered on her retreating form. He demanded to know who the girl was. When an attendant identified her as the daughter of the river god Punnius, Apollo's voice was sharp with impatience. He didn't care about a father who wasn't even there. He wanted her name. The sudden, intense focus made Daphne's heart pound against her ribs. A fierce blush stained her cheeks as she reeled from the moment their eyes had locked, her mind screaming a single, panicked question: why? Urged on by the other priestess, Daphne hesitantly offered her greeting to Lord Phoebus, introducing herself. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic rhythm she tried to dismiss as a simple coincidence. He commanded her to approach, and then he spoke her name. The sound sent a jolt through her entire being. She recalled the foolish jealousy that burned whenever he learned another nymph's name, and a dangerous wish bloomed within her, the longing to hear him say it again, up close. But she knew such a joy should never be revealed. As Daphne tended to Lord Phoebus, she prayed he wouldn't notice the nervous tremor in her hands. Her fumbling was slashed short when he gently wrapped his fingers around her wrist, stopping her movement. A senior nymph, seeing Daphne's obvious inexperience, offered to summon a replacement. But Apollo refused with a lazy smile, murmuring that she was cute just as she was. The casual praise sent a shock through Daphne, leaving her blushing furiously as he told the other nymph not to worry, his hands still warm against her skin. Phoebus's voice was low, a veiled warning about his sister, Artemis. He spoke of her terrifying possessiveness, how an arrow would meet anyone, even a brother, who dared to touch what was hers. The words coiled around Daphne. She was one of Artemis's things, a realization that made her feel insignificant. Yet, her heart surged wildly, because Phoebus was talking about her. His gaze never leaving the kneeling nymph, he commanded the other to leave Daphne behind and fetch his lyre, ensuring they would finally be alone. With the other nymph's footsteps fading, a sudden, gentle touch on Daphne's hand made her flinch. Her breath caught, green eyes wide with stunned alarm. His voice, now a low murmur, filled the sudden silence between them. Phoebus revealed that his sister, Artemis, had spoken of her before, mentioning how much the daughter of Punnius pleased her. A look of dawning realization crossed his features as he leaned closer, his golden hair glowing. He finally spoke her name, Daphne, as if it were a profound discovery, changing the very air around them. In his mind, he could almost hear his sister Artemis's intrigued voice, asking if his hunt had been satisfying, now that he'd finally cornered her priestess. Having sent the others away, Phoebus gently took Daphne's hand, his luminous gaze fixed on her as he murmured her name. For Daphne, who had always felt like just another nameless face before the great sun god, the sound was earth-shattering. He remembered her. He had called her by name, and that single word changed everything, acknowledging her in a way she never thought possible. Leaning back, Phoebus casually mentioned his morning hunt as another nymph praised his impressive skill. But for Daphne, kneeling before him, the world had shrunk to this single moment. Her heart pounded so fiercely she could feel the pulse in her trembling fingertips. Desperate, she offered to wash his feet, her mind spiraling with insecurities about her simple appearance. Just as her anxiety peaked, his voice slashed through the noise, soft yet commanding. Daphne, the single word silenced her frantic thoughts, leaving her utterly captivated in the charged air between them. As he gazed down at her, a single, glistening tear tracing a path down his cheek, Phoebus murmured how difficult she made it to simply see her face. Flustered, Daphne stammered an apology, insisting that as a lowly nymph, she couldn't possibly dare to look upon a god so carelessly. His fingers gently tilted her chin upwards, forcing her startled green eyes to meet his piercing blue gaze. He softly asked if that was the truth, his voice laced with doubt as he questioned if she'd truly been hiding away from him all this time. Apollo's voice was a low, confident murmur, revealing he knew she'd watched him from afar while pretending not to see. He finally understood why his sister, Artemis, kept her hidden, not to blind his eyes, but to cover Daphne's. He mused that it was fortunate Artemis didn't know the flustered expression Daphne wore just from hearing him speak her name. His thumb gently grazed her lips as he concluded that his stern sister had completely misread the situation, leaving Daphne breathless and trembling under his intense, golden gaze. He scoffed at her flimsy excuse, deducing that his sister Artemis must have tried to keep her away, fearing she'd suffer a terrible fate. But his sister, he mused, never guessed the truth, that Daphne had secretly held him in her heart all along. His hand clenched into a fist as he questioned her lie, his voice turning sharp. To dare utter a falsehood before the god of truth. His tone dripped with disappointment as he said her name, concluding she wasn't as sweet as she looked, yet now wore such a pitiful face. With his back turned and fists clenched in frustration, Phoebus's voice was chillingly final. He'd had enough, she could go. Though granted this supposed mercy, a cold despair washed over Daphne. She was free, yet a part of her felt as if it were crumbling. If she truly had no longing for him, why did his dismissal feel like such a profound rejection? Her memory of the divine sun god, a radiant figure with features sculpted from light itself, was now irrevocably tangled with the sting of his cold, parting words. Daphne's heart clenched with a delayed, sharp ache. For all his attention, she felt he'd never truly looked at her. The pain hadn't been this intense before he spoke her name, before he shattered the quiet world where her feelings were a precious secret. When her affection was just a private fantasy, a dream of his golden light and a tender embrace in a sun-drenched field, it was a sweet, bearable thing. But his acknowledgement, followed by cold dismissal, had turned her secret treasure into a source of profound sorrow. Collapsed in on herself, Daphne's thoughts spiraled into a dark abyss. She wondered if perhaps Phoebus had cursed her that day. She was falling apart enough to believe it. The days that followed became a torturous cycle. A fleeting glance or a trace of his attention would lift her into bliss, only to cast her back down into despair. Time itself seemed to stop whenever he was out of sight. Seeing him made her tremble with anxiety, yet his absence made the unmoving hours suffocating. It was, in truth, a wretched torment. As Lord Phoebus and Lady Artemis arrived, Daphne and the other nymphs lowered their heads in reverence. Yet, something had changed since their last painful encounter. Though the sun god still seemed to pay her no mind as a woman, he no longer pretended their tense meeting had never happened. Instead, in moments just like this, he offered a flicker of recognition, a subtle glance, or a faint smirk aimed only at her. It was a secret acknowledgement, one so faint that only she could perceive it, and it made her heart pound in her chest. Since that day, Lord Phoebus's behavior had become a source of constant, thrilling torment for Daphne. Surrounded by her sisters, she'd feel his golden gaze lock onto hers, silencing the world around them. A knowing smirk would play on his lips as he slowly raised a finger to them in a silent command to keep quiet. It was a dangerous game, one that made her heart pound with fear and a forbidden excitement, as if they shared a clandestine secret unknown even to the goddess Artemis herself. Ever since that day, Phoebus's attention had become a constant, private thing, a secret acted out in small ways that only she could ever perceive. It was a clandestine understanding, kept hidden even from the ever-watchful goddess Artemis. Yet, this didn't make her feel special or excited among her sisters. She understood with chilling clarity that what the sun god had discovered wasn't her heart, but her weakness. Now, she was perpetually dangling on a cliff's edge, knowing he held the power to send her falling at any moment he chose. Daphne knew with chilling certainty that he wouldn't cast her aside. No, he found it far too amusing to hold her supposed weakness over her, keeping her perpetually on edge. A bitter memory surfaced, another nymph calling her to assist Lord Phoebus directly. The sun god's subtle, knowing smirk confirmed her fears. If he didn't revel in this cruel game, he wouldn't constantly single her out. The cruelest part was remembering how she once cherished these summons, her heart pounding with a hope that now felt like a distant, foolish dream. Among the nymphs, Apollo's attention was fixed solely on her. Daphne murmured an excuse, trying to retreat, her heart a storm of contradictions, desperately hoping he would stop her, and desperately hoping he wouldn't. But in a sudden, dizzying rush that defied all reason, she didn't step away. Instead, she lunged forward, burying her face against his chest and clinging to the fabric of his tunic. As his golden hair fell around her, a slow, knowing smirk graced his lips. In that single, reckless act, her secret vulnerability was undeniably confirmed. His smile wasn't kind. It was the cruel smirk a master gives a slave, confirming that her weakness remained unchanged. That single, knowing look crushed the final sliver of hope in Daphne's heart. She felt utterly foolish, wondering if he was amused by her turmoil, by this pathetic creature at his feet. Despite everything, she couldn't stop herself from clutching the hem of his garment. Her heart pounded relentlessly as she breathed in his scent, which lingered like a ghost, an agonizing reminder of her surrender even after he was gone. Daphne felt she wasn't the person she used to be. His toxic cruelty had poisoned her spirit, turning the once proud huntress into someone who couldn't even draw her bow on a simple rabbit. She despised watching him with other women, yet a twisted, desperate part of her missed even that cruel attention. He was the sun, too heavy for her to hold, while she was just a nymph, too light to truly matter. In this impossible gap, her entire tragedy began, stretching across foolish years where he'd stir her heart with trivial, unnoticed cruelties. His golden hair brushed against her cheek as he leaned in, his voice a low whisper that sent shivers down her spine. He asked if this constant torment wasn't difficult for her. Their dynamic was a dizzying pendulum. Some days he was terribly harsh, and on others, impossibly gentle, always watching her with the detached curiosity of a child peering to see if she would finally break. Then, after one long summer, the visits simply stopped. It was as if Phoebus no longer remembered his worthless toy, forgetting her foolish heart like a sky cleared of rain. Despite the years of his cruel games, a painful truth lingered in Daphne's heart. She missed him. Her somber reflection was shattered by the goddess Artemis, who gave her an impossible command: deliver a gift directly to Apollo's territory at sunset. Stunned, Daphne questioned why she was chosen, but Artemis simply reasoned that the sun god would be glad to see a familiar face. As she walked, a dangerous seed of hope was planted in her heart. Perhaps, after all this time, his feelings had finally changed, and this was her one chance to confess. In the cavernous, sun-dappled hall, Daphne's heart settled on a terrifying resolution. She would risk her very life to finally put an end to this wretched, cursed love. With her hand clutching her chest, as if to still its frantic pounding, she began to walk. Each step echoed with a newfound defiance, carrying her towards the golden-haired god. Her olive-green eyes, once filled with hope, now burned with the cold fire of a nymph pushed past her limit. This torment had to stop, and she would be the one to end it. Her desperate flight through the forest ended abruptly as her foot snagged on a root, sending her crashing to the unforgiving ground. The impact stole the air from her lungs. Lying there, breathless and terrified, an agonizing thought pierced through her panic. Why, even now, as her heart felt like it was being torn to shreds by this relentless chase, was her mind betraying her? An unwanted vision surfaced, of his golden hair falling around her, a memory of a warmth that was now the very source of her terrifying ordeal. A desperate prayer from a foolish past echoed in her mind. What if she had been the nymph he truly loved? Kneeling in the forest, she remembered pleading with Aphrodite, bargaining with the heavens for a single glance of genuine affection from Phoebus. If he could only see her as a woman, not a toy, and direct his love solely at her, for that one impossible moment, she would have gladly given up her life. The memory was a ghost, and she recoiled from it. Lost and uncertain, her resolve hardened. She had to return to Artemis. With a final, desperate resolve, Daphne swore she would never return. As she turned her back on the source of her pain, the bow, her symbol of and devotion, slipped from her exhausted grasp, falling silently onto the cold ground. She walked into the deep woods, seeking the solace of her goddess. But far from the nymph's shadowed path, another being watched. In a sun-drenched chamber overflowing with roses, a goddess with hair of spun gold reclined in pure indulgence, a faint, cruelly satisfied smile playing on her lips. The architect of this chaos was enjoying the view. Long ago, when Eros, the son of Aphrodite, still bore the face of a young boy, he was a creature of whim and wanderlust. Taking the small bow gifted by his mother, he would roam freely across the realms. His travels knew no bounds, carrying him from the sacred halls of Olympus and the golden granaries of Demeter to the sunless lands of Hades. With innocent wings and a curious heart, the young god would even drift into the plains that worshipped the sun, the very domain where Apollo's prophecies descended upon the world. It always began with a single arrow fired by the young god, Eros. He'd inherited his mother's mischievous nature, delighting in the chaos born from love. His golden arrow would spark an obsessive intensity, while its lead counterpart would ignite a deep, soul-crushing hatred. But Eros wasn't the type to stick around for the consequences. He'd simply flee, leaving minor gods to clean up his mess. And that was exactly why Lord Phoebus, the sun god himself, had descended to this very valley on Mount Parnassus today. The sun god's golden hair cascaded over his shoulders as he let out an irritated sigh. This whole affair was just so troublesome. Reassuring a frantic nymph that he would personally send the pest back, Apollo strode through the sun-dappled valley. He soon found his target, Eros, the god of love, lounging idly in the grass. With an arrogant smirk, Phoebus reminded the winged deity that he had trespassed into his domain. Unfazed, Eros accused the sun god of forgetting his name again, earning only a cold sneer in return. With an impish grin, Eros casually listed Apollo's grand titles, boasting that he remembers everything, even the countless useless praises sung by mortals. Taking a crisp bite from an apple, he cheekily questioned if his flawless memory didn't prove him smarter than the god of reason himself. Apollo's piercing blue eyes narrowed with disdain. He scoffed, retorting that if memory equated to wisdom, all humans would be sages. The sun god finally condescended to speak his name, Eros. The winged god's smile widened, twisting the knife by reminding Lord Phoebus of his well-known fondness for human flattery. With a condescending gaze, Lord Phoebus accused Eros of using his little toys to manipulate mortals, pushing them into either favor or despair. He scoffed that Eros merely blinded beings with petty games of emotion, watching their confusion as if he were some great deity. Unfazed, the winged god looked up, his youthful face hardening. He warned Phoebus not to look down on those beneath him. While the sun was a law of the world, Eros proclaimed that love was the greatest providence of them all, a force even mightier than time. Lord Phoebus's arrogance was as radiant as the sun itself, as he declared that even Olympus was bound by the time he governed. But Eros, with an impish calm, simply challenged him. What about love? The sun god's patience shattered. He seized the smaller deity, his voice laced with contempt as he dismissed Eros's bow as a mere toy. He tightened his grip, sneering that the gods only tolerated his chaotic games out of fear of his mother, Aphrodite. To Apollo, Eros was nothing but an eternal child, unfit to wield his dangerous power. With a final, chilling prophecy, Eros warned the proud sun god that until he awakened the great providence of love, he would never find his true place. Unimpressed, Apollo sneered, asking why the winged deity was so interested in him. The sun god's only wish was for Eros to leave his domain, coldly stating that love would always remain beneath his reason. With a knowing calm, Eros remarked that others had spoken with such arrogance in the past. And with that, he turned and soared into the sky, leaving Apollo alone with the ominous words. Eros retreated from the confrontation, flying directly into the opulent, flower-filled domain of his mother, Aphrodite. Lounging with a playful smirk, she mused that it was hard not to watch such a public display, calling him her adorable child. Flustered, Eros snapped at her to stop, but she only continued her teasing, questioning if his little bow wasn't just as cute. She explained that a god like Apollo, who possessed arrows that never missed, simply couldn't resist mocking him. Her words were like fuel to a fire. His eyes narrowed as he asked if she was deliberately provoking him. With a voice as sweet as nectar, a beautiful goddess reminded Eros that he mustn't forget his own power. A sly smile played on her lips as she declared that her choice not to interfere with Lord Phoebus was her decision alone. Therefore, all she could offer was a simple, helpful suggestion. She reminded him of Apollo's recent triumph, how his arrow struck down the great serpent on Mount Parnassus, piercing its heart directly. Her eyes glinted with dark amusement as she offered her final, poisonous idea. Just as Apollo struck that monster, Eros could also strike his heart. As Eros's vengeful words faded into the sky, the target of his divine game remained blissfully unaware. Deep within the sacred forest, the nymph Daphne moved with a quiet, certain grace. Her world was one of cherished freedom and devout her heart sworn only to her patron goddess, Artemis. She had no inkling that the petty squabble between two powerful gods had just sealed her fate. This peaceful solitude was the last she would ever know before a cursed, obsessive intensity would begin its relentless pursuit and shatter her world forever. In a sun-drenched garden, the goddess Aphrodite reminded her son, Eros, that the prideful Phoebus was no different than the monster he'd recently dispatched. She scoffed at Apollo's arrogance, lamenting how reason and restraint, the domains of him and his sister Artemis, were stifling her own influence. To illustrate Artemis's cruelty, she recounted the tragic fate of a nymph whose vow was broken, transformed and forced to face her own companions in a merciless hunt. With a cunning smile, Aphrodite wondered if Artemis knew about the cute little traitor already hidden within her ranks. The goddess of love scoffed, her patience worn thin by Apollo's disrespect. She declared that his so-called reason was nothing but pure arrogance, a dismissal of a power far greater than his own. With cold fury, she commanded her son, Eros, to pierce the sun god's proud heart as he had done to so many others. That very night, two arrows of fate flew from Mount Parnassus. One was gold, carrying a curse of endless affection. The other was leaden, delivering a venom of endless hatred, sealing two destinies in a cruel, cosmic joke. In a terrifying, moonlit dream, Daphne's pleas went unheard. She cried out that she wasn't a deer, that she was their sister, but it was no use. An arrow sliced through the air, finding its mark. The triumphant voice of her fellow nymph, Euclea, echoed through the trees, declaring the hunt a success. As a single tear streamed from her eye, Daphne pleaded for recognition, but was met only with cold disgust for the filthy thing she'd become. The nightmare shifted to a chilling memory. A dog that betrays its master must fall. Daphne jolted awake, drenched in sweat. It was only a dream. For now. Daphne awoke with a start in an unfamiliar, mystical forest, her mind clouded with confusion. A raven perched on a high branch sent a shiver of dread down her spine. It was Lord Phoebus's messenger. This wasn't Artemis's sacred ground. Panic surged as she realized she had somehow strayed into his territory. Her thoughts spiraled into a vortex of fear, wondering if this was the goddess's punishment for the secret feelings she'd been hiding. A sickening wave of nausea washed over her, making every stone and leaf seem suddenly, inexplicably repulsive. The lingering horror of her nightmare clung to her as she found herself in a surreal, dreamlike landscape, desperately wondering if something truly terrible had happened. Suddenly, a hand parted the ethereal foliage before her, and her gaze traveled upward, her breath caught in her throat. Before her stood Lord Phoebus, his golden hair burning like the sun itself. But his expression held an unnerving intensity she'd never seen before. As if claiming a long-lost possession, he announced that he'd finally found her, his voice a low, possessive murmur as he called her his Daphne. Apollo's voice was deceptively gentle as he held her, claiming he'd dreamt she was lost and wandering in his forest. He murmured that her pained, hunted expression had caused him grief. But Daphne's mind was a fog. She couldn't understand why she was wandering or how he had suddenly appeared. His hand enclosed hers as he reassured her that she was safe now, not in a dream, but in his domain. Of all the things she couldn't comprehend, the golden-haired god holding her was the most frightening puzzle of all. Daphne stared up at him, a chilling realization dawning in her olive-green eyes. The look he gave her was one she'd never seen before, the intense, adoring gaze of a man seeing the most beloved woman in the world. He softly told her not to be afraid, but a wave of revulsion crashed over her. Snatching her hand away, she demanded to know who he was. Confused by her terror, Apollo asked what frightened her so. But she only shook her head, insisting he wasn't Lord Phoebus, convinced he was a trick of Hecate's magic. Paradoxically, his gentle expression only made Daphne's chest tighten with dread. He murmured her name, his touch soft against her skin, but it didn't matter if he was real or some cruel illusion. A memory flickered, a moment she had once desperately wished for, where he'd promised she was safe. But the dream she had replayed thousands of times had twisted into a waking nightmare. The reality of his presence, this touch she once would have cherished, was now just too horrifying to bear, filling her with an overwhelming terror. Her name escaped his lips, a soft whisper in the starlit grove. Apollo's gaze was filled with a maddening certainty as he tenderly cupped her face, his touch making her skin crawl. He insisted that he knew she still loved him. The word love struck her with pure revulsion. even as a broken memory of her past admiration surfaced for a fleeting, painful moment. But the thought was instantly twisted into horror. Staring at the terrifying god before her, Daphne couldn't believe any of this was real. His touch, once so desperately longed for, now felt only dreadful to Daphne, sending shivers of revulsion through her. A sickening wave washed over her, and she clutched at her tunic, a bead of sweat tracing her skin as the curse twisted her very memories. It was as if she'd never harbored a single affectionate thought for him. Apollo's golden hair seemed to morph into something monstrous, his voice a low thrum claiming that love had brought her to him. Daphne stumbled back, her heart a frantic drumbeat against her ribs. She was here, forsaking Artemis and her sacred vow, but it wasn't her will. It couldn't be. Then, with a sharp click, an arrow was knocked. A shattered reflection showed Daphne's tormented gaze, a flash of something lost in her olive eyes as a voice echoed, "How much I loved you!" But it brought only a sickening wave of revulsion. Her heart pounding, Daphne fled through the moonlit forest, her bare feet thudding swiftly over the soft earth with each desperate step. Behind her, a furious cry ripped through the silence as Apollo's hand fired out. "Daphne!" he roared, his voice desperate and possessive, spurring her on. She had to escape, had to get out of here, before her sacred vow was irrevocably broken. She had to escape him, her mind screaming that she couldn't stay. "I have to get away from him," Daphne thought, ignoring frantic cries warning that she was running toward ruin, a path where she could be transformed into a deer and suffer a fatal blow. It was just like in the terrifying dream. A sickening wave of repulsion, an abhorrent whisper of "filthy thing," overwhelmed her as she stumbled, losing her footing. "Daphne!" Apollo's desperate roar ripped through the air, his hand flashing golden, barely missing her. As she plunged downward, her long black hair whipped wildly, her eyes clenching shut in utter despair. Daphne's olive green eyes fluttered open, wide with stark terror as the fall abruptly ended. She was no longer plummeting, but held securely in Apollo's unsettling embrace. His golden hair framed her face as he murmured, "Just like in last night's dream, I almost lost you." The words, meant to soothe, only amplified her dread. He moved through the ethereal darkness of the forest, effortlessly clearing thorny vines from their path with a shimmer of divine power, lest her bare feet be harmed. Yet, even protected, her inexplicable fear showed no sign of fading, locking her in a waking nightmare. Daphne frantically pushed against Apollo's embrace, his hand gently stroking her back. Why was he treating her like a precious lover? This touch, meant to soothe, only deepened her profound dread. "Please let me go, Lord Phoebus," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "I must return to Lady Artemis." Apollo's golden hair gleamed as he questioned, "To my older sister?" His grip remained unyielding. She couldn't budge him. She needed to escape, fearing discovery. "Daphne," he reassured, "this land is my domain. If anyone sees, it'll be one of my attendants. What is there to fear?" Her terror mounted, convinced she was caught in a cruel divine prank, her fear itself a forbidden sentiment. Daphne's voice, barely a whisper, questioned why she'd come to his land. Apollo's silent answer resonated, claiming her heart had led her here. His golden hair brushed hers, a sudden, golden gleam on his hand making her flinch, olive eyes wide. Eros, observing, scoffed at her pitiful confusion. Daphne let out a choked sound, overwhelmed. Apollo's piercing blue eyes, Eros noted, held a serpent's hunger, barely veiled by the gentle hand now on her collarbone. Daphne felt his burning thirst and, with a soft sound of anguish, pleaded for him to release her. He held her close, a desperate longing in his gaze. He hadn't asked permission, he mused, but if he did, would she ever return? Daphne knew there was no way she could return. Leaving the moon goddess's sacred land without permission was already an unforgivable offense, but finding herself in the proud sun god's domain made it worse. If her merciless goddess were to discover her predicament, the retribution would be swift and severe. A sudden, visceral flinch mirrored the silent anguish of a woodland creature caught in a snare. Daphne pushed against Apollo, her voice trembling as she cried out that her sacred vow was none of Lord Phoebus's concern. He held her close, his golden eyes filled with desperate longing. He realized she truly believed his relentless pursuit was merely some cruel, divine jest, not the agony of a god cursed with overwhelming love. Under the moon's cold glow, Daphne yearned to flee before dawn, trembling uncontrollably. Apollo's golden hair brushed her ear as he pressed in, certain she knew the dire consequences of returning to Artemis. She is merciful, Daphne thought, grasping at hope. But Apollo's grip only tightened. You trust too much in my sister's favor, he murmured. He wondered what had become of her once unwavering heart. Do not deny what you know, Daphne, your heart and your actions right now. Merely being here, he realized, already branded her a traitor to Artemis's vow. She couldn't be ignorant of his sister's merciless nature. His hand clenched, crushing the fragile white blossoms within his grasp. Apollo held Daphne close in his arms, her fallen form a stark contrast of dark hair and pale skin against his golden form. His gaze, usually so bright, was shadowed with a desperate tenderness. If I were to return you now, he murmured, his voice a low, possessive rumble, my sister would demand the ultimate price. He tried to soften the harsh truth, adding, but don't be too afraid, Daphne. From this moment, he declared, he would take her to his own sun-shared a-moment domain. He leaned down, pressing a soft, tender moment into her flowing charcoal hair. His eyes swept over the shimmering, enchanted glade he'd created. He met her terrified olive-green eyes, a frantic dance of repulsion and trapped fear. You'll live with me forever, he vowed. Apollo's chilling vow to keep her forever echoed in the enchanted glade. Daphne trembled in his unyielding grasp, her voice a faint whisper as she questioned his terrifying words. Ignoring her plea, he held her close, a possessive glint in his blue eyes as he told her it was time. He then commanded her to look, conjuring a vision of a majestic palace. This, he explained, was the work of Eros. The red flower of dawn had already bloomed. It wasn't an offer, it was a glimpse into the golden cage he'd prepared. Holding Daphne close on a sun-drenched balcony, Apollo gestured to the vast domain stretching before them. He asked if she could see it, the easternmost land that he rules. A possessive smile graced his lips as he brought up a dream she'd had, one where she was lost in his territory. He twisted the narrative, claiming she hadn't been running away, but escaping from Artemis's land to find him. In his telling, she was desperately searching for him, lost in a pathless forest, tragically unable to find her way to his palace. Apollo continued to weave his distorted reality, telling her of a vivid dream he'd had. In his vision, she was lost, desperately calling his name into an endless night while trembling with fear. He described his overwhelming urge to rush to her side, to carry her to safety and soothe the tears that made him angry at himself. But when he finally awoke and found her, she wasn't seeking rescue. Instead, she was cowering like a frightened animal, treating him as a threat, forcing him to wander the woods, reduced to a desperate search like any common man. As Apollo held her close, he whispered that it was a relief to finally bring her to this peaceful place. Within her weary mind, however, his words echoed like a cruel joke. The idea that she'd come to his lands on her own was unbelievable, yet she knew it was, without a doubt, the truth. As the god of prophets, he saw truth in his dreams and never spoke a lie. Even accepting this divine fact, she couldn't understand. After years of him enjoying her torment, how could he suddenly be in love overnight? He had done nothing then. She remembered all the years her hope had withered, how he'd revived it with just a scrap of affection, as if she were a prize he could claim at any time. Now, cradled in his arms, he murmured that she didn't believe his words. But belief wasn't the problem. The true agony was the cruel irony of it all. His warm embrace, his gentle tone, the loving gaze she had once yearned for, it was finally hers. Yet her fallen form, her very soul, recoiled in utter repulsion, trapped in the torturous dissonance between her mind and her cursed heart. The chasm between past and present felt vast and terrifying. For years, Daphne couldn't erase him from her heart, yet now her very soul twisted in his presence. Apollo loomed over her on the bed, his voice cold as he laid out the divine facts. She had left Artemis's territory and been found in his, an irreversible truth. With trembling resolve, Daphne retorted that she didn't care. She would gladly return to face her goddess's punishment. He leaned closer, his golden hair brushing her skin, and dismissed her desperate plea as nothing more than foolish words. A chilling vision of Artemis, her silver eyes cold and unforgiving, flashed through Daphne's mind. The goddess's imagined voice warned that she wouldn't dare speak such foolish words in her presence. Trapped in Apollo's arms, Daphne could only whisper her patron's name in despair. He simply dismissed her terror, murmuring that it didn't matter anymore. He told her all they had left was time, and that she was always lovely. A dreadful realization dawned on her. Some unnatural event had to have occurred, because there was no other explanation for the sun god's sudden obsession. Apollo leaned over her, his golden hair framing a face devoid of remorse. He acknowledged that for years he'd done things to earn her resentment, but he callously dismissed it all as a waste of time. He found her attempts to explain his sudden obsession with cute words, accusing her of merely deceiving herself by playing the part of a loyal, chaste maiden for his sister, Artemis. With chilling finality, he commanded her to forget her former master. But Daphne's quiet refusal was absolute. Lady Artemis's domain wasn't a small land. Wherever she was, her heart and faith belonged to her goddess. A flicker of defiance slashed through her fear. Daphne insisted that Artemis was not her former master. As she began to plead her case to Lord Phoebus, he silenced her with his advance, his touch making her recoil. Her breath hitched as she begged him to stop, but he easily overpowered her, pinning her wrists. He leaned over her, his own voice a guttural command not for her, but for himself. "Enough," he growled, "stop it now." It was a desperate, internal battle against the curse raging within him. With a sudden jolt, Apollo pulled back, his mind reeling in confusion. He rose to his feet, turning away as he fought the overwhelming compulsion. He warned Daphne not to test his patience, his voice a low growl. If he had to listen to her talk of Artemis any longer, he confessed with chilling gravity, he thought he might become jealous of his own sister. Ignoring Daphne's terrified cry of his name, the god's fragile control finally shattered, and he leaned over her once more, his teeth grazing her delicate skin. Leaning over her, Apollo's voice was a strained whisper, pleading with her to understand. He warned her not to make his sister jealous, insisting they had already wasted too much time. But Daphne was lost in a torturous paradox, a tear tracing a path down her cheek. She no longer understood her own heart. The sun god's touch sent a forbidden warmth through her veins, yet his every word ignited a deep, boiling hatred. He spoke of wasted years, and she couldn't help but wonder what a god who could have anyone had truly been waiting for. A bitter realization washed over Daphne as she recalled their history. There had always been an unbreachable wall between them. She was within Artemis's sacred boundary, while he remained an amused spectator on the outside. He would watch her from afar, only tossing her scraps of affection when her spirit seemed about to break. Now, his claims of wasted time rang false. She confronted him directly, her voice laced with pain, asking if he didn't find his own sudden obsession bizarre. After all, she was just an amusing challenge, wasn't she? His hand tangled in her dark hair as he whispered her name, and close touch that ignited her fury. Daphne erupted, screaming that he was the one caught in some goddess's vile prank, not her. Unfazed by her outburst, Apollo simply lifted her now limp form into his arms. He calmly rejected her desperate theory, explaining that as the sun god, he could not be so easily deceived. Stepping across the sunlit floor, he asserted his absolute control, reminding her this was his domain. Holding her close on the balcony, he made a chilling promise that soon, his time would come. Apollo's voice was a soft, possessive command. He told her to awaken, demanding that the time she had so freely given to the night goddess be returned to him. Before she could even process his chilling words, he stepped forward, sweeping her effortlessly into his arms. The wind whipped her dark hair across his face as he carried her onto the open balcony, high above the sprawling forest below. Suspended in his unyielding grip, a terrifying clarity washed over her. With a quiet gasp, she finally understood the true depth of his claim. Daphne's mind swirled in a hazy fog, convinced this had to be a dream. Everything felt indistinct and unclear, like the faint border between sky and land at dawn. This terrifying reality couldn't be happening. As Apollo's hand gently lifted her chin, he pleaded with her to give herself to him. He made heavy promises, that she'd have no time for resentment, that no one, not even he, would ever treat her carelessly again. But his words were weightless to her. The man and his vows were surely just illusions in this inescapable nightmare. His voice was a possessive murmur, calling Daphne his lovely queen. He confessed to himself that he'd missed everything, even the sound of her voice that he once found so defiant. With a firm hand on her jaw, he commanded her to look at him. Before she could resist, his lips claimed hers in a desperate, consuming tender moment that left her breathless. As a single tear escaped her eye, he pulled her back against him. He buried his face in her hair, whispering that her scent was wonderful, a fragrance he'd always noticed whenever he drew near. His whispered adoration continued, likening her scent to water shared a moment by his own sunlight. He confessed her form was far more beautiful than he'd ever imagined. Overwhelmed, Daphne's legs gave way, and she whimpered that she couldn't stand. "Then lean on me," he commanded softly, pulling her flush against him. He buried his face in her neck, urging her to relax, fearful of leaving even the slightest mark on her perfect skin. As tears streamed down her face, he made a solemn promise to teach her everything that was to come. The sensations in this nightmare felt terrifyingly real. His firm hands wrapped around her, the helpless feelings, and the strange sounds of his voice flooded her mind. It was like wandering through an endless, moonlit maze. A chilling fear crept in, that if this continued, she might commit an unforgivable sin, even within a dream. She knew she had to wake up. She had to escape this torment. And yet, the phantom feeling of his sun-bright hair brushing against her skin was an inescapable, horrifying memory that refused to fade. An unknown sensation, something she'd never experienced, coursed through her as she went limp in his arms. Apollo held her close, whispering his regret that he couldn't stay longer, commanding her to simply rest quietly within his time. Overwhelmed by loathing, Daphne hated herself for yielding to an illusion born of pitiful longing. She felt so tainted that even Lady Artemis would never forgive her, forever exiling her from the moon's paradise. This nightmare, she knew with chilling certainty, was a curse that would devour the rest of her life. For her entire life, Daphne had known only her sacred vow. But that day, another dream layered itself over the lingering nightmare. Within this sun-drenched vision, she found herself speaking to her own reflection, whispering to the poor Daphne, who stood lost in a field of golden sunflowers. It was a foolish, lonely fantasy of unrequited love, a beautiful lie where a god could treat her with tenderness. But the vision soured into a horrifying truth, a nightmare where being loved by him only made her despise herself more than ever before. A cruel voice sliced through her fleeting memory, asking if the perfect Phoebus from her dreams could ever know her misery, or if even Artemis could grasp her agony. The gentle vision shattered. As a single leaf drifted down, the world dissolved into a terrifying, dark abyss, pulling her into its cold depths. The voice turned intense, accusing her of being the one with sinful desires, the one who brought him here. Tangled in thorny vines, a horrifying realization dawned. This nightmare was her own creation, and she had no one to blame but herself. A chilling thought pierced through Daphne's panic. It no longer mattered if this was a dream or reality. The phantom memory of his touch was a permanent stain on her soul, an unforgivable transgression. Cold dread washed over her as she realized she could never again seek forgiveness from Lady Artemis. That sacred path was forever closed. A horrifying prophecy echoed in her mind, a whisper of a despair so deep that she would one day wish to become a tree just to make the relentless torment finally stop. Daphne jolted awake with a sharp gasp, her fallen form drenched in a cold sweat. The horrifying nightmare still clung to her, a suffocating shroud of phantom touches and whispered prophecies. Sitting up, her wild olive eyes darted around the room as she looked down at her hands, her mind racing. Was it all just a dream? A chilling realization began to dawn. If the vision of her becoming a tree was the dream, then her terrifying encounter with Lord Phoebus on the balcony wasn't. A fresh wave of terror washed over her as she wondered what on earth was happening to her. Her fingers tightened on the sheet as a horrifying realization dawned. The sun was setting, its beautiful light a terrifying omen of Lord Phoebus's imminent return. She had to escape now. Rushing onto the balcony, her eyes scanned the area, but her clothes were nowhere to be found. She was trapped, impossibly high in the god's palace, with his attendants guarding every exit. The desperate thought of asking for help surfaced, only to be crushed by a devastating truth. In this world, no one would ever dare defy a god to save her. Unlike the wild freedom of Lady Artemis's domain, Lord Phoebus's world was a kingdom unto itself. Gods of time and nymphs of nature served him, all living in a constant state of adoration and fear, terrified of losing the sun god's favor. But as Daphne stood alone, the thought of his supposed love brought her no joy. A crushing wave of shame and despair washed over her instead. Biting her lip in anguish, she desperately questioned why. If a person could suddenly fall madly in love, could they also come to loathe someone so completely? Clutching her tunic, a cold and absolute truth settled in Daphne's heart. She did not love him. Because of this, his affection brought her no happiness, only an overwhelming wave of disgust. The memory of his lips on her skin, the obsessive longing burning in his eyes, it all felt vile, filling her with a loathing that was deeper than shame. A dark, desperate wish began to fester within her. If only she could become a beast, so an arrow from her bow could find the very throat he had once so carelessly shared a moment. Daphne recoiled from her own horrifying thoughts, feeling like she was losing her mind. The desperate wish for violence against a god was a terrifying sign of how broken she felt. But through the haze of panic, her survival instincts ignited. She had to escape. Her frantic eyes landed on a deep red cloth draped over a nearby chair. It would have to do. Tossing aside her thin covering, she wrapped the new fabric around herself, her expression shifting from terror to grim resolve. It was light enough to run in. It was time to go. Her bare feet slapped against the cold marble floor as she raced down a corridor that twisted into an impossible length. Panic seized her. She'd been running for what felt like an eternity, yet the hall never seemed to end. She remembered seeing him ascend the stairs, but now, with the sun completely gone, she was utterly lost in the disorienting darkness. Suddenly, her strength gave out. Her ankle twisted, her fallen form lurched forward, and she collapsed onto the ground in a heap, the breath knocked from her lungs with a pained grunt. A frantic urgency seized Daphne. She couldn't waste a single moment. Soon enough, he would come for her. But as she tried to flee, a paralyzing dread rooted her to the spot. Her legs, once so swift, refused to move. Panic flared in her olive eyes. He would be here any moment. Just as the thought crossed her mind, a deep voice echoed in the hall, a chilling command reminding her he had told her to stay still. A heavy footstep landed before her, and she looked up in sheer terror at the towering god. His voice, a low and chilling command, echoed her name through the vast hall. Looming over her collapsed form, the sun god questioned if she hadn't heard him, reminding her of his explicit order to stay put until sunset. Then, his terrifying presence softened as he knelt beside her, his movements disarmingly gentle. He softly asked if she was hurt, but a cruel smirk quickly betrayed his concern. Tauntingly, he wondered if she still believed this was a dream, before his hand fired out, forcing her chin up to meet his inescapable gaze. With a surge of revulsion, Daphne shoved at his hand, her voice cracking as she pleaded for him not to touch her. Her resistance only seemed to amuse the sun god, who found her struggles utterly adorable. He easily overpowered her, pulling her close as his voice dropped to a silken threat. He warned her that while her defiance was cute, anything more would be unnecessary between them. Suddenly, golden light flared around her fallen form. As he commanded her to wake up, his cruel, confident smirk confirmed her deepest fear. She was completely at his mercy. Looking down at Daphne's unconscious form, Apollo murmured that he'd only wanted her to relax, but instead, she'd fallen asleep. With a twisted sense of care, he gently lifted her into his arms, promising she could rest there for now. He carried her through the silent, imposing halls of his domain as the long night finally bled into a quiet dawn. But they weren't alone. High above, perched on a rooftop, the mischievous Eros watched the tragic scene unfold with a curious hum, observing the consequences of his cruel little game. The game was no longer amusing. On a high rooftop, another deity watched the scene with grim intensity, the messenger god Hermes poised as if ready to intervene. The chaos below had escalated, drawing the attention of other Olympians. Eros's playful curiosity had soured into genuine panic. A nervous sweat broke out on his brow as he stared, his previous smirk replaced with a horrified grimace. A single thought consumed him as he watched the tragic pursuit unfold. This was really bad. He'd gone too far this time. In a sun-drenched field near ancient, magnificent ruins, Lord Phoebus stood in a rare moment of tranquility. His golden hair, a halo in the daylight, cascaded over his powerful shoulders as he calmly stroked his celestial steed. But the peaceful quiet was abruptly broken. His serene expression hardened, his piercing blue eyes narrowing in irritation as he noted the sudden noise. Following the sound to the sky above, he watched a winged chariot descend from the heavens. A single name, sharp with recognition and annoyance, escaped his lips: Hermes. Winged sandals settled lightly onto the sun-drenched grass as the messenger god, Hermes, greeted the sun god with a cheerful grin. Exclaiming that it had been a while, he fanned at his collar, playfully complaining about the intense heat radiating from the nearby sun chariot. With a cheeky wink, he asked if the great Lord Phoebus, god of prophecy, had foreseen his arrival. Apollo replied coolly that even he couldn't know everything, adding that Hermes always appeared without warning. Hermes simply stated that was the nature of his job as Zeus's messenger. Apollo's gaze held no warmth, only sharp suspicion. He remarked coolly that it was no wonder merchants and thieves served Hermes, before demanding to know the messenger's true purpose. After a moment of hesitation, Hermes' composure shattered. He exclaimed that the mistress of the moon, Artemis, was absolutely furious with Apollo. In a panicked flashback, Hermes relived the terror of entering her sacred forest, hounded by her dogs and nearly struck by a volley of silver arrows. Hearing this, a slow, knowing smile spread across Apollo's face. He asked Hermes to keep his sister's actions a secret, cryptically adding he didn't want his future companion to meet a grim fate like some nymph suitor from the past. With a weary sigh, Hermes told Apollo that now that he knew the missing nymph was with him, the merciless Artemis would surely treat him as an accomplice. He wistfully mentioned that Apollo rarely visited Olympus anymore, missing out on the year's finest ambrosia. Unimpressed, Apollo coolly replied that he already had more than enough sweetness in his life and asked for news. Hermes likened his situation to Zephyrus's unrequited love for the prideful Chloris, but Apollo scoffed, finding it troublesome to be grouped with him, leaving the messenger god utterly perplexed. With unshakable pride, Apollo insisted his situation was different. The nymph, he claimed, had admired him for a very long time. Hermes listened, finding it hard to comprehend how the god of pure logic could lose himself so completely over one woman, even becoming estranged from his sister. Dismissing the concern, Apollo coolly stated he was merely focusing his gaze where it was needed. As Hermes prepared to depart, he asked for a message for Artemis. Apollo simply requested he deliver a new bow from Hephaestus, a small offering to momentarily appease her growing anger. Hermes offered a final, cryptic warning, reminding Apollo of Aphrodite and her mischievous son. He cautioned that, just like roses have thorns, the goddess of beauty was unpredictable, and getting on her bad side was a perilous game. Suddenly desperate, Hermes pleaded with Apollo to make up with his sister, admitting his terror of being struck by one of her silver arrows. As the messenger god hastily departed, Apollo watched him go, his golden hair catching the breeze. He coolly replied that he would reconcile with Artemis, if time permitted. With a final, cool smile, Apollo watched the messenger god depart, offering a placid blessing for the traveler's footsteps. Unseen by the sun god, another winged deity offered a prayer of his own. Eros, the mischievous architect of this unfolding tragedy, looked towards the heavens with a surprisingly reverent expression, asking Phoebus to illuminate the world. As the sun painted the sky in brilliant hues, Apollo's thoughts returned to his singular, all-consuming purpose. The hunt for Daphne was about to resume with renewed intensity. As the last vestiges of night painted the sky in cosmic violet, the sharp cry of a raven echoed over the grand halls of Olympus. Below, Lord Apollo walked through a silent colonnade, his measured footsteps the only sound in the pre-dawn stillness. He mused that his sister's time was ending, but his own thoughts were already consumed by Daphne. He wondered if she had finally woken, recalling that she'd slept since yesterday, exhausted from his pursuit. A possessive longing tightened in his chest. If not for his sacred duties, he would stay to watch her sleep. Apollo's thoughts drifted back, consumed by the memory of that girl. He recalled how she had always treated him with a caution so intense it bordered on perverse, a frustrating wall he constantly tried to breach. But his mind settled on one specific moonlit night, seeing her again on that balcony. For a fleeting moment, her guard had dropped, her cheeks flushing as she let out a soft, startled gasp. Despite all her persistent wariness, he remembered how, in that instant, an undeniable impulse had finally surfaced, cracking her stoic facade. Apollo fixated on her fleeting blush, rationalizing her fear as mere confusion. Serving a fickle goddess like Artemis would naturally make a nymph erratic. He scoffed inwardly. The failed courtships of lesser gods had no bearing on his own divine pursuit. In his mind, it was simple. No woman could truly reject him. Daphne's resistance was nothing more than a momentary whim. With a chillingly rational certainty, he clenched his fist, his piercing blue eyes hardening with resolve. He declared it to the heavens. That girl loved him, without a single shred of doubt. To the sun god, every moment not spent in his pursuit was nothing but a waste of time. The heavy door to her chambers creaked open, and Apollo leaned against the frame, his voice a possessive murmur as he asked if she was awake. Inside, Daphne sat like a doll, captured and adorned for him in a crimson gown with flowers woven into her dark hair. He had made her beautiful, his perfect prize. Looking at the somber nymph, his twisted conviction only hardened. Indeed, this was how it was always meant to be. Apollo's piercing blue eyes held a chillingly serene pride as he looked down upon his work. Below him, Daphne's own gaze was shadowed and lost, the vibrant flowers in her dark hair a cruel mockery of her captive state. This, he declared with absolute conviction, was a form truly befitting the Queen of Tenedos. The grand doors creaked open as Apollo leaned against the frame, his golden form a stark contrast to the cool tones of the chamber. His voice, smooth and filled with a chilling satisfaction, slashed through the quiet air as he noted that Daphne was finally awake. His gaze swept over her, taking in the crimson gown and the vibrant flowers he'd personally woven into her dark, charcoal hair. She was a perfect picture, a queen for his taking. But her olive green eyes were hollow, her expression utterly lost in despair, a beautiful but broken prize. With a dismissive command, Apollo cleared the grand chamber, leaving himself alone with the silent, captive nymph. He approached her slowly, his voice laced with a chillingly false concern as he remarked on her failing health. Kneeling before her, his piercing blue eyes fell upon her injured ankle, a bitter reminder of her failed escape. His hand gently grazed her foot as he delivered a soft but unyielding order. She was to stop wasting her strength on such unnecessary struggles. Her days of running were over. Apollo's voice, a soft rumble, filled the opulent chamber as he repeated his concerns, a familiar litany. He declared he worried for her health, urging her to find ease of mind and simply rely on him. To Daphne, held limp in his arms, his words were a chilling mockery. The sun god observed the fading light, deciding it was late, that she required rest for her recovery. Her ankle, he noted, still pained her from her desperate struggle. With an almost tender possessiveness, he carried her, a beautiful, broken prize, deeper into his magnificent halls towards the waiting bed. Her days blurred within the gilded chamber, the gnawing revulsion settling only slightly when Apollo was absent, then churning violently with nightfall. She turned to him, her voice low with a fragile challenge. "Lord Phoebus, don't you find it strange?" He met her gaze. "What do you mean?" Daphne described her arrival at dawn, feeling possessed, screaming, and desperate to escape. Apollo merely scoffed, dismissing her terror as the fickleness of a goddess's servant. "It's not odd to mistake dreams for reality," he stated coolly. Daphne looked away, a chilling thought blooming. Did he truly believe her agony was just an illusion? Lord Phoebus, his golden hair shimmering, declared he hadn't used his power on the terrace. "That was your choice," he asserted, convinced Daphne had been swayed by a long-suppressed longing for him. He reminisced about her inability to hide her expressions when he approached. Now, in his chambers, he acknowledged her distress, attributing it to the heavy guilt of her broken vow. "That's why you tried to escape, convincing yourself it was all a dream." He stroked her arm, insisting impulses were fleeting. "It's just another passing feeling, isn't it?" Daphne, her olive green eyes shadowed with despair, finally whispered, "You're right, Lord Phoebus. I regret everything." Daphne's hands, bound with a delicate chain, trembled as she confessed her harrowing truth to Lord Phoebus. She'd awoken in a strange land, treated as his lover, convinced it was a nightmare. "Had I known it was real," she whispered, her voice laced with profound regret, "I would have never followed you. I want to set everything back." Apollo gazed at her, a shadow in his piercing blue eyes. He asked if she truly understood the peril of returning to Artemis's domain. Daphne, tearful but resolute, declared her willingness to face Artemis's punishment, even defeat, rather than endure another moment as the sun god's captive. Daphne's heart twisted with a dark truth. She'd betrayed Artemis long ago, her fallen form now sullied by what she'd dismissed as a dream. A goddess like Artemis, she knew, wouldn't tolerate her sight. Daphne imagined Artemis's cool, silver eyes fixed upon her, wishing for a swift, merciful end to her suffering. Where had it all gone wrong? Was it the moment she first saw his face, stepping into that loathsome current herself? Yes. Now, only deep resentment remained. He'd always toyed with her emotions. His love, she believed, was merely another cruel amusement. Daphne's olive green eyes, heavy with despair, reflected a mind sinking into a still lake, longing to disappear. She cursed her fleeting, past attraction to such a wretched being, wishing to let go of everything. She told herself Lord Phoebus would eventually tire, and she'd return to Lady Artemis's forest, facing whatever awaited her there. With a bitter, defiant look, she challenged him. You must have found this quite entertaining, haven't you? She imagined his amusement at her prior vulnerability, clinging like someone on a cliff's edge. This time will be no different, she thought, a tragic resolve hardening. Watch with delight as another worthless being meets her end. Water churned, echoing a declaration, just like you always have. Lord Phoebus stood, golden hair gleaming, a powerful figure in his opulent chambers. His hand clenched on the fabric, a silent testament to his control. Daphne, observing his commanding presence, whispered, You. He turned, his gaze sharp. You speak as if leaving you there brought me some kind of joy. Daphne flinched, a quiet, pained sound escaping her. Her shadowed olive-green eyes brimmed with unshed grief. But to me, she began, her voice strained. Lord Phoebus stared ahead, his golden hair shimmering, a resolute glint in his piercing blue eyes. He'd had enough of her struggles, her defiance. Words, he knew, were useless now. They didn't matter anyway. He decided they wouldn't waste any more time. With a swift movement, he bent towards the nymph, who lay vulnerable beside him on the ornate bed. His lips claimed hers, a desperate, possessive act born of his cursed love. Daphne's fallen form tensed, a silent scream echoing in her mind. She couldn't move. Apollo's hand tightened on her shoulder, drawing her closer into the inescapable embrace. Apollo pressed Daphne onto the luxurious bed, her slight form yielding softly. A muffled gasp escaped her lips as his fallen form claimed hers, pinning her beneath him. He silently recalled standing foolishly, never tasting her lips. Did she think that brought him joy? He felt she'd toyed with him like a boy with an insect, knowing he'd flinch. Daphne, tears brimming in her olive-green eyes, choked out. Now you've even taken a liking to insects. She accused him of tossing women aside, forgetting his divine dignity, swept away by mischief. Was this just another whim? Apollo silenced her desperate words with a deep, inescapable tender moment. Apollo's golden head descended, his lips pressing against Daphne's in a suffocating embrace. A wave of repulsion washed over her. You're a depraved libertine, she thought, a childish boy, and I no longer love you. Apollo pulled back, his expression hardening. No, he stated firmly. My heart didn't change overnight, and neither can yours. Daphne's olive-green eyes widened, a silent what? Why? Echoing. What right do you have? She wondered. He insisted. Before you, I'm neither the god of the sun nor a foolish boy. That despicable man you speak of. His face twisted with raw anguish. Why does he wear the same expression as someone hurt? Apollo's golden gaze burned with a year of unyielding devotion, his heart thrumming as he confronted Daphne about her singular disdain. Her tear-filled emerald eyes betrayed raw vulnerability as she lay before him, exquisitely adorned. He wrestled with her fervent pleas for divine retribution, imploring her to abandon such desolate desires. The air thickened with unspoken yearning. Later, as Daphne found herself in quiet repose, a profound, almost suffocating awareness bloomed. The potent connection between them, she realized, transcended the arrows of the god of mischief, stemming from Apollo's relentless, burning desire. Daphne's deep emerald eyes brimmed, a single tear escaping as a profound, unsettling realization pierced her. A desperate plea escaped her lips for him to move, a growing panic tightening her chest as her movements were utterly constrained. Apollo's golden gaze, intense and knowing, softened as he probed her desires, yet held a subtle edge. A frantic energy coursed through Daphne, her fingers clutching her garment as he observed her palpable resentment. His voice, a low murmur of unsettling closeness, probed her suffering. A touch, tender yet possessive, caressed her, asserting a dominion that left her breathless. He offered his wisdom, a promise of his unwavering presence. Apollo, a vision of golden intensity, awaited, surrounded by celestial blue blooms, his very presence radiating an inescapable warmth. Daphne's emerald eyes widened in terror as his hand, possessive and firm, silenced her burgeoning protests, trapping a choked cry in her throat. His dazzling golden hair cascaded around them as he leaned closer, an unbearable pressure building. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic bird seeking release. He drew her nearer still, his touch a silken cage, asserting an undeniable claim. The grand chamber, an opulent witness, seemed to close in around them, a beautiful prison. Apollo's dazzling golden hair mingled with Daphne's deep river green as he enveloped her, his touch a potent, inescapable claim. Her mind screamed against the encroaching darkness that threatened to consume her entirely. He held her close, his grip on her, tender yet possessive, as his voice murmured of their undeniable connection. Apollo acknowledged her fierce internal hatred, yet he anticipated her perceived compliance. He expected her to suppress her deep repulsion, to feign a desire that mirrored her past, demanding a tragic performance of closeness. Daphne's heart hammered, a frantic bird trapped within a silken, suffocating cage. Apollo's golden presence enveloped Daphne, his dazzling hair cascading around them as he whispered, acknowledging her intense rage. He declared their past antagonism meaningless, assuring her she could torment him if she wished, so long as she remained by his side. His possessive hand found hers, a warm, firm clasp that seemed to absorb her frantic energy, leaving her breathless. His sapphire gaze burned into her, a silent vow that despite her palpable hatred, their connection, to him, was absolute and unchanging. He believed their prior conflict had simply passed, replaced by his unwavering, endless love, and her compliance was merely a matter of time. Daphne, trapped in Apollo's golden embrace, wrestled with the suffocating warmth of his presence. She saw past the god the world worshipped, recognizing a relentless force that disregarded her autonomy, pushing the boundaries of personal space. Her breaking of an oath to Lady Artemis now felt like a tragic preamble to this unavoidable, intense tension. She knew, with a sudden, sharp clarity, that a single word, a fragile statement, had finally reverberated through his unwavering certainty. His golden composure shattered, the air crackling with an unseen force, leaving him profoundly affected by her defiance. Apollo's consuming fixation on Daphne burned with an unquenchable fire. His endless love demanded everything. Yet, deep within Daphne, a potent emotion swelled, threatening to shatter her composure, a raw surge of hatred and terror against his relentless pursuit. She had seen his arrogance, but this new, desperate facet of Apollo was unsettling. Unbeknownst to them, the tale of his inescapable claim reached Lady Artemis, Daphne's protector. Her silver gaze hardened with cold fury as Morpheus recounted the truth, igniting her fierce protective instincts. Morpheus meticulously recounted to Lady Artemis the vivid details of Daphne's arrival, revealing the frantic state she was in and whose name her lips had called out so desperately. The silver-eyed goddess listened, her fury deepening with each word. Meanwhile, Apollo's intense golden warmth enveloped Daphne. He questioned if offering her neck to Artemis's arrow was her idea of escape, reminding her she could have simply returned. He argued that even an easy end was still the end, and no god could cross the Styx. But Daphne, her heart pounding a furious rhythm, met his sapphire gaze with an unyielding declaration. His possessive claims had nothing to do with her. Under the indifferent moon, Daphne lay, her spirit yearning for a purity she feared lost, longing for Artemis's swift arrow as sanctuary from this shadow. A tear mirrored her fading hopes. Suddenly, an overwhelming golden warmth enveloped her. Apollo's voice, a possessive murmur, declared his intense jealousy. His dazzling hair mingled with her deep emerald strands, drawing their faces into an inescapable proximity that crackled with tension. His sapphire gaze burned, demanding her unwavering focus. "Don't you dare look away from me, as if my sister is right here with us." The air itself seemed to creak under his absolute claim. Apollo's intense gaze found twisted beauty in Daphne's distress, deeming her flushed, desperate state lovely. A single tear mirrored the dread in her emerald eye as his overwhelming golden warmth enveloped her. He pressed closer, his voice a low, possessive murmur, suggesting that at this rate, everything she desired, he would bestow upon her. His words, meant to soothe, instead ignited a searing wave of terror in Daphne's core. The atmosphere around them grew thick with a potent, suffocating tension, trapping her in his inescapable claim. Phoebus Apollo lay, his dazzling golden hair a radiant cascade against the ornate bed, his blue eyes seeking Daphne's hidden gaze. "Are you afraid?" he murmured, his voice a warm current. He offered reassurance, promising her unwavering comfort and vowing never to inflict pain, neither in that moment nor ever. His profound adoration bloomed in his words, "I cherish you more than anything." Lost in the overwhelming fervor of his own heart, He gently held a strand of her deep river green hair. "Please," he breathed, a fervent plea for complete devotion, "be with me." Phoebus Apollo's voice, a warm current, had murmured fervent adoration and a profound plea for closeness. His dazzling golden hair framed a gaze Daphne had only dared to imagine. Yet, her heart, now burdened by an inexplicable repulsion, struggled to comprehend. How had she woken in his land? Why was he, after years of indifference, suddenly treating her as a lover, his touch gentle yet persistent? The hands wrapped around her offered no coercive force, but the disorienting shift in his demeanor, from neglect to profound obsession, filled her with a chilling confusion, a stark contrast to his overwhelming fervor. His gaze, radiating from his dazzling golden hair, lingered on Daphne like a fragile, precious object, poised to shatter at any moment. She, with her deep river green hair framing her face, wrestled with an internal storm. This was a moment she once yearned for, yet now, only profound hatred and resentment boiled within her. A powerful, unseen force seemed to separate them, a stark chasm between his fervent desire and her magical repulsion. Phoebus Apollo's gentle, melting expression, so close to her, felt despicable, yet Daphne found herself unable to fully escape the overwhelming warmth of his presence. The warmth of Apollo's presence pressed close, a subtle heat blossoming in the air around Daphne. Though his touch was gentle, the overwhelming proximity threatened to dismantle her fragile composure. Her deep river green hair fanned softly, but inside, her entire being felt utterly shattered, fragments of a forgotten self reflected in a single tear. Had a god ever truly sought her permission? She wondered, her spirit recoiling from his fervent adoration. A bitter truth resonated within her. Her own feelings had never truly mattered in the first place, not to him, not to anyone. Daphne's heart ached with a profound, unyielding hatred. She wished he would simply treat her as a mere object, believing it to be his true nature. Her deep river green hair shimmered as she resigned herself to whatever Lord Phoebus desired. Apollo, his dazzling blue eyes fixed on her, seemed to accept her apparent compliance, oblivious to the chasm between them. His presence emanated a warm, persistent pressure. A single tear traced a path down Daphne's flushed cheek, a testament to her shattered spirit. She inwardly dared him to continue his condescending affection, just as she believed she had taught him. Yet, Apollo's unwavering fervor permeated the air, a silent vow that his feelings would never change. He desired to grant her. It was, for Apollo, a gentle night. His dazzling golden hair spilled around them as his presence pressed close, a fervent warmth enveloping Daphne. His presence was a tender embrace, yet it ignited a storm within her. Every perceived tender brush of his lips was a desperate battle against the profound hatred boiling inside her. Daphne bit her lip, a silent act of defiance, holding back the torrent of her repulsion. Still, his touch felt like a soothing plea, a silent instruction not to fall into despair, oblivious to the true source of her agony. Their hands intertwined, a testament to his unwavering grip, a cruel paradox against her shattered will. The atmospheric heat intensified, a fervent closeness blossoming as Apollo's dazzling golden hair mingled with Daphne's deep river green. Her hand, clutching his back, was a desperate, silent plea against the overwhelming closeness. He perceived it as a fragile resistance, a beautiful delicacy to be protected from despair. His gaze softened, noting her lips, swollen from a silent torment. He tenderly caressed them, lamenting the pain she had inflicted upon herself, utterly oblivious to the profound hatred fueling her every struggle. Yet, his desire persisted, longing to hear something from her own mouth. The pervasive warmth of Phoebus Apollo enveloped Daphne. His dazzling golden hair brushed against her deep river-green locks as he believed her resistance to be a mere act of vengeance for past slights, convinced her true feelings for him remained unchanged. His blue eyes held a fervent certainty that he possessed endless patience, just as he always had. Daphne, however, yearned for his former contempt, wishing for the days when he treated her as an object, finding solace in the absence of this suffocating, unwelcome closeness. Her heart pulsed with an irrepressible hatred. The fervent warmth of Phoebus Apollo enveloped Daphne once more, his dazzling golden hair mingling with her deep river green. He vowed to accommodate her, urging her not to fear, convinced his patience would prevail. Yet, for Daphne, his tender presence was a cruel torment. She yearned for his previous disdain, wishing he would treat her like an animal, rather than with this suffocating closeness. His intense gaze, burning with a love she profoundly hated, could almost be mistaken for a beloved's affection. A silent tear welled in her eye, a testament to her inner turmoil, as the moon cast its luminous glow over the distant, serene night. Daphne's heart hammered, a frantic rhythm against the oppressive warmth she yearned to flee. Despite Apollo's relentless presence, a chilling despair clung to her very core. A lone tear, cool against her flushed skin, escaped the corner of her eye, a silent testament to her profound hatred. She longed for release, a desperate, unspoken plea forming on her lips. Callisto, I. Her deep river-green hair lay across her, seemingly absorbing the cool, distant light. His unwanted adoration, burning with an inescapable intensity, fueled her inner rebellion against the encroaching fate. Amidst a fragrant bath of delicate blossoms, a radiant woman, Aphrodite, luxuriated in warm waters. Her attendants whispered praises of her luminous presence, likening it to the roses around her. She accepted their words with a knowing smile, affirming that love calls forth beauty. A gentle warmth blossomed in her chest as she pondered this truth, concluding that the very pinnacle of captivating allure, the embodiment of beauty, was none other than Phoebus Apollo himself. A silent heartbeat of admiration filled the serene air. Aphrodite, still enfolded in the fragrant warmth, pondered the intricate threads of emotion. Her thoughts drifted to the sudden, inexplicable shift from profound affection to an unyielding abhorrence for one previously cherished. A delicate warmth, almost a pulse of anticipation, resonated within her. Her wisdom declared that without a true understanding of love's essence, even the radiant Phoebus Apollo could not prevail in the unfolding divine drama. An attendant gently offered companionship for her walk, but Aphrodite, desiring a moment of serene contemplation, chose to embrace her radiant presence in tranquil solitude. Bathed in the golden warmth of the sun, the radiant goddess Aphrodite luxuriated amidst a cascade of blossoms, her dazzling golden hair a luminous halo. A serene heartbeat resonated within her as thoughts of Phoebus Apollo stirred. She observed how he carried himself with such unwavering pride, utterly unaware of the swift descent his fate would soon undergo. Aphrodite silently declared the fault for this intricate turn of events lay squarely with him. He had dared to disturb her tranquil contemplation. A subtle warmth intensified as her hands slowly lifted, then clenched. Had he only wished to beg for her favor, she would have, perhaps, permitted him such humility. A soft whisper of concern almost marred Aphrodite's flawless beauty. A fleeting moment she quickly dismissed. It felt trivial to dwell on mere reason or the notion of falling so easily for someone. Her luminous gaze, a radiant warmth, reflected the eternal beauty that defined her and all gods, asserting that their divine nature would never change. Unlike transient mortals, whose lives bloomed and faded quicker than a flower, deities remained constant. Humans, she mused, in their brief existence, ceaselessly transformed. A radiant warmth still resonated within Aphrodite as she considered Phoebus Apollo's limited foresight, noting how his unwavering pride kept him from perceiving all futures. She found it fascinating, almost pitiful, how humans, under the guise of their will, sometimes even dared to challenge the gods, ceaselessly struggling to become masters of their own fate. A luminous butterfly, delicate and ethereal, fluttered nearby as her gaze lingered. Yes, Daphne, she mused, a silent decree for the maiden to embrace her mortal nature. A subtle pulse of anticipation quickened within Aphrodite, her curiosity ignited by the intricate drama's unfolding conclusion. The ethereal forest pulsed with a sapphire glow under the watchful moon, spectral deer and luminous butterflies hinting at a forgotten freedom within Daphne's consciousness. Yet, her waking reality was the sun-drenched stone of a grand, elegant structure. Time had blurred within these gilded walls. She pondered the ceaseless passage of days since she last truly gazed upon the vast expanse of the sky, questioning if it had been 10 or 20. Her heart, a tumultuous sea, felt its tides shift constantly, her emotions changing 12 times a day, a relentless internal struggle against the curse that bound her. Each morning, a fleeting relief washed over Daphne as Phoebus Apollo departed. But by noon, a bewildering longing, like an endless ache, would pull at her heart. As twilight descended, a fierce urge to vanish would grip her. Yet, when he returned to their chambers, an irresistible, intoxicating warmth, a profound current, would compel her close. Despite knowing it devoured her essence, she would surrender to the consuming presence. The profound sensations of the night would cling to her, lingering within her very being, until the next uncertain dawn, leaving her bewildered by the person she had become. Golden clouds drifted, a serene sight that stood in stark contrast to the regret, despair, and self-loathing now burning within Daphne. Each morning, her spirit felt as weightless as her body when maids, with practiced grace, would prepare her according to Phoebus Apollo's exacting tastes. A profound exhaustion would then claim her, sending her fleeing back into the arms of sleep. Motivation had been stripped away, her will a fading echo. A single tear escaped, a silent testament to the insidious control over her heart and mind. She yearned for a lost self, a time when she rode freely under an open, vibrant sky. Daphne's mind retreated to nights when the full moon, a luminous pearl, cast a sapphire glow upon the ancient forest. She remembered riding alongside Artemis, her heart alight with the thrill of the hunt, surrounded by kindred spirits. The potent scent of damp soil mingled with the invigorating night air, the very breath of the forest a living force around her. A wind, unbound and wild, had embraced her then, a current of pure freedom that tethered her to nothing but the vast, open world. It was a searing contrast to the consuming warmth that now ensnared her, a memory of absolute liberty. Back then, a phantom breeze of wild freedom stirred through Daphne's memories, carrying her back to nights under a sapphire moon. She recalled the thrill of her horse's hooves against the damp earth, a rhythmic heartbeat in the vast, open world where her spirit soared, untethered. She was a blur of emerald hair, chasing the wind alongside Artemis, her heart alight with pure, unburdened joy. What kind of face did she use to wear before the shadow of fate fell upon her? Her mind conjured an image of innocence, eyes wide and luminous, brimming with a warmth that had yet to curdle into irreparable hatred. Daphne, with her deep river-green hair, galloped through the dreamlike, moonlit forest, a world of luminous blue. Memories resurfaced of her former self, unbound and free. She recalled following the goddess Artemis and other companions on exhilarating night hunts. The forest's vibrant energy, the earthy scent carried on the night air, and the unfettered wind were once her solace. A profound warmth had filled her heart in those moments of freedom, a stark contrast to the cold grip of her current, cursed hatred. Daphne's spirit had once soared, unbound as she galloped through the luminous blue forest, a radiant world beneath the moon. She remembered herself, free, leaping through the vibrant wilderness, a bow in hand. In those moments of pure autonomy, a profound warmth had bloomed within her heart, a stark contrast to her current desolate hatred. Surrounded by bright blossoms, she wondered at the unburdened expression she wore then. It was a face unmarred by societal expectations, a girl who had fled any predetermined destiny, spurning the confining prospect of traditional unions. She had always run wherever her heart pleased, rejecting any fate that dared to chain her independent spirit. But now, the free spirit Daphne once embodied was a distant memory, replaced by a suffocating despair, as if falling endlessly. The elaborate chamber, a gilded cage, held her captive, its oppressive luxury a stark contrast to her longing for autonomy. Her deep river-green hair, once wild, framed a face streaked with tears, her emerald eyes pleading with unseen deities. "Oh gods, please, if you can hear my voice," she whispered, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. Kneeling on the cold, patterned floor, she begged, "Take pity on my wretched self, and please deliver me from this place." The sun cast a fiery warmth across the room, but only a profound chill settled in her soul. Daphne questioned her whispered pleas, wondering which deities would truly listen. A lone feather, perhaps a silent messenger of her relentless pursuer, drifted past the grand arch, bathed in the setting sun's fiery embrace. Her tumultuous heart quieted to a resolute beat. From now on, belief must reside within herself alone. Her emerald eyes, once shadowed by despair, now gleamed with burgeoning strength as she gripped the ornate railing. Her past flight had been reckless, a heart-pounding sprint without strategy. This time, she would meticulously learn every hidden path of the palace and the shadowed forest beyond. The lavish chambers offered no comfort, but Daphne's mind, sharp and strategic, saw a path. Since Phoebus Apollo had proclaimed her free within his domain, the palace handmaidens could not deny her request for a walk into the enveloping forest. Her heart, once heavy with regret and tears for lost pleasure, now burned with a single-minded purpose. She would flee, seeking refuge with her father, the river god, to escape the ceaseless warmth of Apollo's presence. His dominion was vast, but bound to his sun chariot's journey, unlike her, a huntress who roamed the wild depths. This hatred for him was her unwavering truth, her only choice in a battle she must now fight, trusting in herself alone. A pervasive, almost intimate warmth settled around Daphne, the golden light from Phoebus Apollo's domain illuminating her deep river green hair and glinting in her resolute emerald eyes. Her heart, a drum of fierce, irreparable hatred, beat a challenging rhythm against the ever-present, radiant heat. Clenching her fist, she cast her gaze towards the brilliant sun, acknowledging the vastness of his dominion with a defiant intensity. The lavish chambers, once a gilded cage, now served as a strategic point for her escape. Her mind, sharp and focused, turned to the verdant, shadowed forest beyond, her intended refuge from his relentless warmth. Phoebus Apollo, bathed in the pervasive, golden warmth of his own domain, drew a soft breath. His dazzling golden hair, light as spun moonlight, flowed gently as he tilted his head, his sky sapphire eyes holding a deep, distant yearning. A delicate butterfly, its wings like whispers, settled lightly upon his open palm. Chloris, he murmured, the name a wistful echo of the verdant beauty he ceaselessly pursued. His heart thrummed with an endless love, radiating a potent warmth that promised both devotion and an inescapable embrace, a warmth that now, tragically, fueled Daphne's deepest repulsion. The vast, golden plains stretched endlessly under the radiant sun, bathed in Phoebus Apollo's pervasive warmth. With a gentle pull on the reins, his majestic steed moved forward, drawing the golden chariot across the sun-dappled landscape. Apollo's dazzling golden hair flowed like liquid sunlight, framing a countenance of deep longing. His sky sapphire eyes were fixed on an unseen horizon, an embodiment of his relentless desire. His heart pulsed with an endless love, a powerful, intoxicating heat that promised unwavering devotion and fueled Daphne's every desperate heartbeat of hatred. The pervasive, golden warmth that was Phoebus Apollo settled, encountering a different air, a soft, cool current. He found Zephyrus, who emanated a gentle counterpresence amidst the vibrant greenery. Apollo's dazzling golden hair shimmered as his sky sapphire eyes, usually burning with the fire of his endless love, held a flicker of curiosity. He questioned the force that had drawn Zephyrus into his radiant domain. Zephyrus, observing the god's enduring internal heat and the subtle weariness beneath his relentless pursuit, spoke of widespread rumors and a shared burden of intense, unyielding affections. The pervasive, golden warmth of Phoebus Apollo had always coursed through countless encounters, a potent, unyielding flame. He carried within him a history of profound affections, each heart drawn into his brilliant orbit by an inescapable pull. A haunting image of one such connection lingered, a figure with eyes holding a quiet, knowing depth, marked by the powerful ardor that had once enveloped them. It was this consuming fire, this boundless devotion, that now fueled Daphne's desperate flight, a warmth she felt only as an suffocating, inescapable heat. A radiant warmth enveloped the expansive landscape as the sun cascaded its golden light upon the earth. Above, a magnificent winged steed descended, its powerful wings stirring the clear blue sky. Phoebus Apollo, his dazzling golden hair trailing like a comet, rode with an unwavering gaze fixed below. His very presence radiated a potent heat, a burning intensity that signaled an inescapable arrival. He dismounted, his steps deliberate upon the verdant ground, as the leaves seemed to stir in response to his presence. His blue eyes, alight with an unyielding purpose, settled on an unseen figure. "No wonder the leaves are restless today," he observed. "Is it because you've blown all the way into my domain?" The air shimmered with Apollo's potent heat as his unwavering gaze found Artemis, seated serenely beneath a tree. Her silver hair glowed, yet her eyes held a detached quality. Apollo, consumed by a singular focus, probed her listless nature, questioning her purported indifference to deep passion. With a radiating warmth, he then pressed on Daphne's rumored affections, the notion that she had succumbed to love. Artemis, with measured calm, simply offered, "My apologies." The moment hummed with unspoken tension, a prelude to the inevitable, intense confrontation for Daphne's fate. The air still hummed with Apollo's potent warmth. Another presence, Zephyrus, subtly noted Phoebus Apollo's dramatic inclinations, a stark contrast to his own composed demeanor. Apollo's gaze, alight with prophetic knowing, then turned towards the verdant meadow of Chloris, the goddess of flowers. He envisioned the blooming flora, in its very joy, might offer a glimpse of her cherished happiness, a fleeting smile to feed his relentless desire. Zephyrus, however, remained untouched by such ardent yearnings, his eyes reflecting no profound longing or hidden passion. Apollo, his gaze alight, reflected on past divine disruptions, like Demeter's crops nearly withering. He mused on the irony of his relentless pursuit, the radiant god now drawn to this specific realm. As a leaf drifted idly, Zephyrus's composed presence seemed to ask if love truly held such grand significance. Apollo, dismissing his infamous clash with Eros as a mere child's whim, radiated an inescapable warmth. Zephyrus, reclining with tranquil grace, maintained his detached air, implicitly requesting to be left out of such heated divine contentions and passionate principles. Apollo once acknowledged the empty truth of his own eternal existence. While mortals considered eternity a blessing, he had found his days and nights stretched into a dull, meaningless repetition, a hollow flow with no profound purpose. But then, a moment of profound warmth pierced through his indifference. He recalled seeing her gentle smile amongst the vibrant blooms, a sight that ignited a storm of feeling within him. From that instant, his world reshaped. He yearned to witness existence through her eyes, to forever bask in her radiant joy. His path became clear, to wander endlessly, devotedly, to be near her, forever. The ethereal figure, a goddess of blooming nature, once stirred with joy only when flowers unfolded under the sun. Apollo, recalling this, spoke to Zephyrus, explaining how grand divine offers left her unmoved. "What you're saying sounds almost." Zephyrus mused, his gaze reflecting understanding. Apollo affirmed the profound truth of happiness found in natural beauty, a lesson he now perhaps applied to his own fervent pursuit. A subtle shift in the air followed, as Zephyrus, in turn, silently declared his own moment to weave his gentle influence into the world's tender heart. Apollo's dazzling golden hair seemed to radiate warmth as he mused on the nature of his fervent pursuit. He dismissed Zephyrus's subtle challenge, asserting that his devotion was a profound, mutual connection, a love distinct from other divine attachments. His heart resonated with a steadfast conviction. He believed his reason remained intact, guiding his relentless path forward. Zephyrus, however, held a different truth, a silent current flowing beneath their exchange. With an atmospheric shift, he predicted a deep regret awaiting Apollo, a warning that intensified the burgeoning romantic tension. Apollo's sapphire gaze sharpened as Zephyrus revealed his agreement, but only on one mysterious condition. Apollo, his dazzling golden hair luminous, spoke of a grand occasion, hinting at a wedding. Zephyrus questioned him, but Apollo confirmed his intentions with unwavering certainty. The golden-haired god then strode forward, declaring a magnificent celebration was imminent, where a queen would be introduced to rule by his side in Tenedos. His form radiated with an almost blinding warmth, a metaphor for the burning passion within his heart. Every fiber of his being seemed to pulsate with this profound desire, casting a radiant, almost suffocating glow, a testament to his single-minded devotion. The grand halls of the temple shimmered under the evening's tender glow as Phoebus Apollo arrived, his dazzling golden hair radiating a familiar warmth. An attendant, visibly flustered, greeted him, her voice betraying a deep unease. Apollo's sapphire gaze sharpened, sensing an immediate tension in the air that echoed a disquiet within his own fervent heart. He pressed for an explanation. With a hesitant breath, the attendant revealed that Lady Daphne had ridden her horse into the moonlit forest earlier that day and had not yet returned, leaving an unsettling void in her wake. Phoebus Apollo's sapphire gaze was already sharp, but the news of Daphne's disappearance ignited a fiercer warmth within him. His dazzling golden hair seemed to ripple with the intensity of his resolve, each strand echoing the burning passion in his heart. A subtle, knowing smile touched his lips, hinting at a conviction that bordered on certainty. He radiated an almost suffocating heat, a testament to his single-minded devotion. The search for his queen would now begin in earnest, his fervent desire pulling him forward with an irresistible magnetic force. He knew he would find her. The grand palace gardens, bathed in a deceptive sunlight, offered little solace. A quiet unease had settled over the residence, fueled by Lady Daphne's prolonged seclusion. Servants noted her unusual stillness, a stark departure from her once vibrant spirit. They spoke of a memory shrouded in a heavy silence, when she was found alone on the sun-drenched terrace, her posture conveying a profound, almost desperate sorrow. The air around her thrummed with an unspoken tension, a silent reverberation of a relentless devotion that had twisted into an unbearable psychological weight. The palace, a sun-drenched paradise to some, felt like suffocating warmth around Lady Daphne. Servants whispered of her deepening despair, her silent nights consumed by tears. Her profound sorrow reached Lord Phoebus, whose dazzling golden hair gleamed. His sapphire eyes, burdened with endless love, held an aching misunderstanding. He could not comprehend why this opulent haven was a gilded cage she yearned to escape. Then, an urgent whisper, "Lady Daphne." Her deep river green hair swayed, a desperate pulse urging her flight into the fading twilight. As twilight descended, casting long shadows across the grand terrace, an attendant, Arya, gently urged Lady Daphne to reconsider her intention to leave. The forest, she warned, held dangers in the encroaching darkness. But Daphne's deep river green eyes held a distant gaze, remembering a time when such wilderness was a sanctuary, permission to roam freely granted by Lord Phoebus himself. The attendant's concern felt like another tether in a gilded cage. Daphne's heart thrummed with repulsion as she firmly declared the perilous woods preferable to the palace's suffocating warmth. She yearned for freedom, a desire denied even now, trapped by promises that felt like chains. Lady Daphne, her deep river green hair swirling, had repeatedly demanded solitude, yet the attendant, Arya, persisted, a living echo of Lord Phoebus's relentless gaze. Daphne felt the palace's suffocating warmth intensify, perceiving Arya as merely his eyes and ears within her gilded prison. A profound repulsion pulsed through her as she declared the opulent haven a torment. Ignoring Arya's hushed plea, Daphne challenged her to follow into the perilous woods, certain the attendant could never find her. Daphne's wild heart had once served Lady Artemis, making her need no permission for her own escape. Arya recoiled, overwhelmed by Daphne's fierce, unyielding resolve. Arya, the attendant, pleaded, her voice trembling as she described Lord Phoebus's radiant sorrow. She evoked a vision of cherished closeness, a golden memory of their shared warmth amidst sun-drenched flowers, where his dazzling golden hair framed her deep river-green locks. Arya implored Daphne to stay, to mend Apollo's aching heart and rekindle his smile. But Daphne's own heart, a wellspring of irreparable hatred, pulsed with fierce repulsion. Arya's earnest words, meant to soothe, instead intensified Daphne's suffocating desperation to flee, her disdain causing the attendant to recoil in profound shock and dismay. Arya's pleas intensified into a trembling reprimand, daring to question Daphne's audacious disregard for Lord Phoebus, a god. She warned that Apollo's favor, however radiant, was but a fleeting warmth, a temporary solace. But Daphne's deep river green eyes sharpened, seizing upon the word. "Exactly," she retorted, her voice a cool counterpoint to Arya's rising panic. "Such connections are ephemeral, as fleeting as a summer breeze." Her heart, a fortress of irreparable hatred, knew this truth deeply. She was merely a temporary diversion, nothing of true significance to him. The palace's stifling warmth only intensified her desperate need for escape. Arya, still trailing Daphne, painted a vivid tapestry of Lord Phoebus's universal adoration. His radiant presence captivated not just nymphs, but even gods, making his profound attention seem a weighty, undeniable gift. Daphne, her heart a fortress against the warmth Arya sought to ignite, walked resolutely. She knew everyone loved him, a truth that only deepened her own irreparable hatred and desperate need for distance. Arya's voice, trembling with disbelief, finally pierced the air. Why did Daphne not share this devotion? Daphne's deep river green hair shimmered as she looked away, her silence a heavy answer. The atmospheric heat of their strained interaction intensified. Arya's persistent pleas finally drew a quiet response from Daphne, her deep river green eyes holding a complex, almost wistful sorrow. As she walked through the sun-drenched palace, its warmth suddenly felt stifling. A profound realization settled within her, a quiet admission that she had truly forgotten everything of that initial adoration. Yet, a haunting echo of a past devotion resonated in her heart, a whisper from a time before the curse, before the irreparable hatred consumed her. She had loved him so much then, a radiant truth now lost in the desperate flight from his obsessive pursuit. Artemis, with a cool grace, informed those gathered that Daphne had sought refuge in the forest and not yet returned. She admitted to allowing Daphne her freedom, understanding the spirit that drove her, so long as she remained within the protective sanctity of her domain. Apollo's radiant presence seemed to draw all light, his dazzling golden hair catching the gleam as his sapphire eyes sharpened, reflecting a potent, unspoken resolve. A heavy silence descended, a prelude to the storm that began to gather within his heart. The very air thrummed with a burgeoning, undeniable tension. He knew then that her absence transcended mere domain. The gathered attendants, sensing his escalating fervor, trembled as they confessed to having disobeyed his commands, desperate in their own search for Daphne. The trembling attendants delivered the grim news. Daphne had skillfully evaded their every effort, slipping past even Lord Phoebus's watchful crows. A servant, the last to witness her escape, relayed the chilling direction of her flight. She was heading straight for Lady Artemis's protective domain. Apollo's dazzling golden hair seemed to pulse with an inner fire, his sapphire eyes narrowing to dangerous slits. The air around him grew heavy, thick with a potent, undeniable desire that twisted into a fierce resolve. His heart thrummed with the unbearable weight of her absence, an atmospheric heat building within him. Despite evading initial pursuit, Lady Daphne's trail led directly towards Lady Artemis's protective domain. Phoebus Apollo's dazzling golden hair framed a face set with grim determination, his sky-blue eyes burning with an unyielding, possessive light. A powerful, atmospheric heat emanated from him, a testament to his boundless obsession. What had transpired earlier that day? Daphne's desperate flight unfolded, her hurried footsteps echoing through the sun-dappled forest. Her heart pounded a frantic rhythm against her ribs, each breath a desperate plea for freedom from the relentless, intense pursuit that shadowed her every move. Daphne's deep river green hair whipped with her hurried flight, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Every beat of her heart echoed the relentless pursuit, the suffocating atmospheric heat of Apollo's obsession pressing in from behind. Her fingers tightened on her quiver strap, a desperate anchor in her panicked escape. She glanced back, her emerald eyes reflecting the immense, unfamiliar forest. This vast land felt endless, a stark contrast to the secure paths she knew with Artemis. Back then, the goddess's wisdom always guided her, but now, alone, things were profoundly different. Daphne's fingers tightened on her quiver strap, a desperate anchor against the looming threat. She knew she had to find her way entirely on her own, if she ever hoped to escape Phoebus Apollo's relentless obsession. With every fervent beat of her heart, she yearned for a path that would lead her far from his grasp, sparing her from ever returning to that horrible place of his dominion. The wind, sharp against her cheek, and the dense, deep green foliage of the forest momentarily created an illusion. For a fleeting instant, her emerald eyes reflected a time long ago, a memory of riding through mystical woods with companions, safe and free from the atmospheric heat of pursuit. Daphne's deep river green hair settled as she found temporary refuge by a forest pool. The phantom memory of serene rides with companions, a time of freedom, now felt like a distant, cruel dream. Even without Apollo's immediate presence, the lingering atmospheric heat of his obsession permeated her thoughts, questioning if her ordeal was a divine jest. "Let's rest here for a little while," she uttered, her breath a ragged sigh. So much had transpired, blurring the lines of reality, leaving her to grapple with overwhelming despair. In this fleeting calm, however, she sought clarity amidst the chaos. Daphne gazed into the tranquil pool, her emerald eyes piercing the shimmering surface as memories of Phoebus Apollo surfaced. She found herself questioning everything about him, about the illusion of shared devotion. A phantom warmth, starkly contrasting her current repulsion, rekindled in her thoughts. He had once enveloped her in his presence, his intense adoration a powerful current she had felt unable to resist. Tender nights unfolded under his gaze, moments so filled with a deep, consuming closeness that her heart had truly believed in his love and in her own reciprocation, intertwining their destinies. Daphne's emerald eyes still pierced the tranquil pool, her thoughts heavy with Phoebus Apollo and the illusion of a shared destiny. A phantom warmth, a stark contrast to her current repulsion, briefly rekindled the ghost of his intense adoration and their past closeness. She questioned everything, the weight of her magical curse making clarity elusive. "Ah, let's head back for today," she murmured, a desperate yearning for sanctuary. Yet, as twilight yielded to an oppressive darkness, the forest canopy thickened, and an unsettling sensation began to prick at her senses. The very air grew heavy, an atmospheric heat that signaled a return of her dread. Daphne's emerald gaze held a troubled depth as an ominous warmth enveloped her, a soundless echo of relentless pursuit. She exhaled, a desperate attempt to steady her racing heart. Her ingenious escape had fooled her pursuers, sending them toward Artemis's sanctuary, a chaotic diversion that felt like practice for her very survival. Apollo, the sun god, was bound by the day, a temporary respite she desperately clung to. Upon reaching Artemis's serene domain, a fragile hope sparked within her. She planned to lie low, believing his fervent pursuit might eventually wane, though the pervasive atmospheric heat of his obsession still prickled her senses. Under the vast, starlit canopy, Daphne rode her horse, her emerald eyes reflecting the distant light as she resolved to steel her heart against the oppressive warmth of Apollo's omnipresent affection. Arriving at the palace, she gently caressed her mount's snout. Releasing the horse meant it would be taken to the stables, yet her soul ached for even a single moment of freedom from his orbit. The thought of returning to Phoebus's chambers, of being bound by his relentless attention until the sun's return, sent a profound shiver through her. She yearned for any brief sanctuary from his fervent pursuit. Daphne resolved to initiate a conversation, her hands delicately tying a dark ribbon, a subtle resistance against the pervasive warmth of his presence. Phoebus Apollo stood behind her, his radiant form a golden silhouette, his hands lingering near her, an intimate gesture that sent a shivers of repulsion through her. The sun had already set, yet the atmospheric heat of his endless love was inescapable. A troubling sense of déjà vu washed over her. She recalled a past affirmation, a yes, to his omnipresent desire, and his unsettling question now echoed, "Did you have fun?" Her emerald eyes widened, reflecting the bitter twist of her cursed hatred. The pervasive warmth of Phoebus Apollo's presence pressed in, echoing the unsettling heat of his relentless affection. Daphne's heart hammered, a frantic drum against the encroaching closeness as his hand neared her. His voice, a low rumble, pierced the silence, stating he had come for her outside his domain, where he wasn't around. The golden strands of his hair brushed against her, an oppressive weight, as her limbs felt entangled. A profound shiver of revulsion coursed through her, trapping her in a web of unwanted desire, her desperate flight abruptly severed by his inescapable pursuit. Apollo's voice, imbued with a possessive warmth, filled the grand chamber, subtly chastising Daphne for her time away. He closed the intimate distance between them, his dazzling golden hair a radiant halo beside her deep emerald locks. Despite Artemis's tireless search for her, Apollo held a chilling patience, confident in her eventual return. He spoke of believing in her, understanding her wild spirit, yet his words felt like a silken snare. Daphne's heart pounded, a frantic drum against the atmospheric heat building between them. His intense sapphire gaze burned into hers as he began to outline a new, unsettling freedom. The air thickened with a possessive energy as Apollo's voice reverberated, "Then marry me and live forever." Daphne recoiled, her heart a frantic drum against the sudden, overwhelming proximity. A storm of revulsion brewed within her, recognizing the futility of trying to make him understand her true feelings. He perceived only what he wished to, deaf to her pleas. His very presence now felt like a suffocating shroud, stirring a deep, visceral unease within her. This was no romantic confusion, she knew, but a harrowing curse. His intense desire, so suddenly kindled for a nymph he once ignored, felt like a fleeting fancy destined to extinguish once the novelty faded. Apollo's voice, imbued with a possessive warmth, hardened with a subtle frustration, questioning why Daphne treated his fervent affection as though it were a given. The atmospheric heat between them intensified, a silent pressure that stole her breath. Her heart throbbed, a frantic flutter against her ribs as a storm brewed within her, her hand clenching tight. With a forced calm, Daphne finally spoke, her words cutting through the tension. She would marry him. Apollo reeled, his golden gaze wide with disbelief. Daphne, however, already envisioned her escape, weaving a desperate plan to lead him to a perilous, ancient forest, hoping time and danger would finally loosen his relentless grasp. Apollo's voice was a chilling whisper, accusing Daphne of attempting to escape him, perhaps even seeking oblivion beyond his reach. His sapphire gaze burned with a possessive intensity, betraying the depth of his fear. A tremulous warmth emanated from his touch as his hand gently cupped her face, drawing her closer. He declared his unwavering devotion, promising eternal love and an absolute refusal to ever let her go. The atmospheric heat between them reached a fever pitch, culminating in a moment of undeniable closeness that stole Daphne's breath. Her heart pounded, a frantic rhythm against the sudden, overwhelming proximity. A faint scent of dry hay, sharp and distinct, pricked at Daphne's senses as Apollo, his voice a possessive murmur, declared he was unlike any man she had known before her sacred oath. His golden gaze promised to grant her every wish, yet she recognized only the relentless, clear eyes of a hunter pursuing its prey. A shiver ran through her as he chillingly suggested a need for correction. Leaving his frantic, scatterbrained declarations behind, Daphne found herself contemplating the story of Callisto, finally understanding the profound desire to change one's form entirely, to escape the god's grasp, much like a bear fleeing its hunter. Daphne's thoughts hardened into a chilling clarity, revealing the gods, Phoebus Apollo included, as predators who seized and discarded on their whims. Her former vows and tender feelings now appeared in utter absurdity. No divine power would save her. She alone, a hunter against the sun god, had to believe in herself. The lingering atmospheric warmth from Apollo's intense declarations, that close moment which once stole her breath, now felt like a calculated deception. What he called a gentle night had been a mere delusion, crafted to ensnare. A powerful surge of resolve propelled her, her heart a drumbeat of determined escape. Apollo's sapphire eye reflected a warped image of them, his gaze piercing. His voice was a tender inquiry, noting the frigid response of her body. He regretted their closeness in such an open space, yet his embrace tightened, a burning heat against Daphne's icy skin. She felt a violent recoil, a desperate internal struggle against the suffocating warmth of his presence. The world seemed to fragment around her, a shattered reflection of a dark reality. Her heart hammered with terrifying clarity, her bare feet grounding her in a sudden, chilling realization. What had she allowed? Phoebus Apollo cradled Daphne, his voice a low thrum of regret. He confessed to losing himself for a moment, the thought of her vanishing making him act unlike his usual self. He admitted no true intention for their closeness in such an open space, deeming punishment unthinkable for one so small. Yet, his gaze lingered on her trembling lips, declaring them lovable. His heart echoed a desperate plea. He did not want to lose her. Despite his admissions, the atmospheric heat of his presence intensified, a stark contrast to Daphne's growing terror. He knew he showed his feelings poorly, but no matter. Daphne remained within Phoebus Apollo's radiating warmth, a stark contrast to the glacial clarity of her thoughts. His tender regrets and declarations of not wanting to lose her merely underscored her dire predicament. "Do whatever you want," he murmured, a hollow permission that only solidified her chilling realization. She was a possession, his forever, a thing taken. Her heart, once vulnerable, now beat with a detached, analytical rhythm. To hurt him, she understood, would require no effort at all. Apollo's dazzling eyes, filled with an unbearable tenderness, failed to see the deepening frost within her. "Lord Phoebus, don't apologize to me," she thought, the words an impenetrable shield against his relentless devotion. Daphne's thoughts solidified into a chilling clarity. It was truly strange. There was nothing left within her for him, not a lingering spark of the affection he had once dismissed. This wasn't revenge, but a profound emptiness. His embrace, once perhaps desired, now felt utterly horrifying, a suffocating heat she yearned to escape. Apollo, his blue eyes reflecting a dawning pain, registered her stark withdrawal. His heart, however, clung to a possessive heat, viewing her not as a being with autonomy, but a magnificent prize to claim. Rain lashed against the majestic facade as Phoebus Apollo's urgent call pierced the dark, humid air. He traced a hand over his radiant golden hair, his expression shadowed, muttering words meant to soothe, yet carrying an edge of desperation. His relentless sapphire gaze, though hidden, pressed upon Daphne like an unbearable weight. Her own heart recoiled, not with warmth, but a chilling dread that spread through her veins. The thought of his touch, his close proximity, ignited a horrifying, consuming heat within her. Her emerald eyes, betraying a profound revulsion, fixed upon him as her hands subtly withdrew. Phoebus Apollo's sapphire eyes, heavy with an agonizing devotion, reflected a storm brewing within him. A desperate plea formed on his lips, though unspoken. His thoughts echoed, a fervent denial against the perceived accusation. He had never intended to cause her distress, his very essence now bound by a love that verged on obsession. The memory of returning to the temple at sunset, hearing the handmaiden speak of her grave condition, pierced him anew. He stood within the sacred halls, the weight of her magical hatred a cold counterpoint to the relentless, burning adoration in his heart. Phoebus Apollo's thoughts were a tangled maze of regret. He chided himself for failing to keep his promise, for allowing anxious possibilities about her well-being to relentlessly surface in his mind. The mere rumor of her presence in Artemis's domain had ignited a desperate need within him, refusing to be quelled. He had not wanted to lose her, his fervent desire clouding his judgment and making him rush forward. He had only yearned for her closeness, yet in his obsessive pursuit, he hadn't considered the devastating cost, the possibility that a piece of her essence might vanish forever because of him. Daphne, meanwhile, felt a chilling dread, a tear tracing its path down her cheek. He extended a hand, a desperate whisper escaping his lips about not being his usual self, admitting his actions were wrong, and questioning if he hadn't always been gentle with her. Daphne recoiled, a cold wave washing over her at his persistent closeness. His sapphire eyes, glistening with tears, reflected a profound agony. "I truly," he began, his voice thick with a suffocating devotion that pulsed with intense heat. He seemed to implore, his every fiber yearning for her. But within Daphne, a silent resolve formed, rejecting any concern for her safety or her true, magically twisted feelings, creating an unyielding barrier against his overwhelming pursuit. Apollo's raw agony was a sight Daphne once believed she craved, a twisted prize in her new reality. Yet, as his despair bloomed before her, she felt an unsettling emptiness, a chilling apathy where hatred should have raged. She watched him, a deep sense of detachment washing over her as he bowed his golden head in the long corridor. His words, a desperate plea, resonated with a suffocating devotion that both repulsed and drew her. He pulled her closer, his golden hair spilling over her dark tresses, the intense heat of his proximity overwhelming. His sapphire eyes, brimming with an agonizing warmth, sought hers, blurring the line between worship and possession. Daphne's mind reeled, her feelings a chaotic swirl she couldn't comprehend. Daphne's deep river-green eyes, haunted by an internal struggle, questioned if her shattered essence could possibly matter to him. Apollo, enraptured by a fierce, undeniable obsession, held her close, his dazzling golden hair a radiant spill over her dark tresses. The intense heat emanating from his form created a suffocating warmth around them. Yet, a chilling detachment gripped Daphne. Outside, the sky wept, rain pouring like silent tears, its mournful sound echoing a lament. It seemed to weep for her, yet a stark conviction settled within her. No one truly grieved for her, especially not in this agonizing dance. Unable to escape the eternal bondage of a god, Daphne felt a haunting premonition of a poor nymph's demise, one who lost her freedom and her past. It was as though the very air mourned for her fate. Phoebus Apollo held her close, his dazzling golden hair a radiant cascade over her deep river-green tresses. His sapphire eyes, brimming with tears, reflected a profound, almost agonizing devotion as he whispered her name. His confession, "I was wrong," hung heavy in the heated space between them. Yet, a chilling resolve settled in Daphne's core, an impenetrable wall against his fervent warmth. Apollo's golden eye burned with agonizing intensity, a fierce reflection of his obsessive love. His dazzling form encompassed Daphne, golden strands intertwining with her deep river-green hair, binding them in a tight embrace. Within Daphne's emerald gaze, a profound emptiness settled. She observed the scene with chilling detachment, recognizing the suffocating heat emanating from him. This, she realized, was the stark sensation of a heart utterly devoid of feeling. Even as he enveloped her, performing the part of a devoted lover, she felt nothing, his sickeningly brilliant face eliciting no reaction from her shattered soul. Apollo's radiant presence still burned beside her, his obsessive gaze fixed, but within Daphne, the once feverish turmoil of hatred began to cool. A profound weariness had settled in her core, eclipsing even the rage. She felt a chilling clarity, not a shred of feeling, neither affection nor anger, remained in her heart for him. His fervent warmth, once suffocating, now barely registered. "I want to wash myself, Lord Phoebus," she murmured, a quiet plea for cleansing. He had, in his relentless pursuit, extinguished her very essence, leaving behind a hollow echo. The world outside wept, its mournful tears mirroring the death of who she was, a nymph born of a river god. Before the weight of the world pressed upon her, Daphne existed as a free spirit, her life flowing as gracefully as a river, unburdened by hatred or the confines of restraint. Her youthful days were filled with simple joys, her touch gentle in the serene waters, reflecting a soul untouched by turmoil. Then, Phoebus Apollo arrived, his fervent pursuit shattering that pristine existence. He dismantled the tranquility she once knew, replacing it with a suffocating warmth that extinguished her inner light. A gentle breeze whispers through the leaves as sunlight dances across the surface of a shimmering river. Daphne stands ankle-deep in the cool, familiar water, the serene landscape of her home stretching out before her. A flicker of recognition warms her. This is her father's river. But the peaceful moment shatters as confusion takes hold. Her last memory is of being a captive in Phoebus Apollo's temple. A disoriented gasp escapes her as she tries to connect the dots. She cannot remember coming back, and the gaping hole in her memory feels unervingly wrong. A vision glimmers across the sunlit water, a memory of a younger Daphne, splashing freely with a radiant, carefree smile. The warmth of the dream feels incredibly real, a forgotten joy that aches in her chest. But the beautiful illusion shatters as clarity cuts through the haze. Her eyes widen as the pieces click into place. Right? She realizes, the idyllic scene wavering before her. She understands it now. This peaceful escape, this perfect moment of freedom in her home river, is nothing more than a dream. The dream shifts to a memory of a dazzling, simpler time, before love or hatred ruined everything. A vision of her younger, radiant self appears, an innocent soul she barely recognizes anymore. The contrast sharpens the pain of what she has lost. Daphne clutches her arm, a tremor of despair running through her as she stands in the phantom river. She realizes that even if she could go back, it would never be the same. She is too broken. A wave of regret washes over her. If only she had not loved Phoebus Apollo. No, her thoughts correct themselves, a deeper sorrow taking hold. It all started when she left her home to find sanctuary with Artemis. The warm memory of the river fades into a cold, dark abyss. Daphne's body drifts slowly downward, her emerald eyes reflecting a profound emptiness. A single, crushing thought consumes her. If only she had never come into existence, she would never have known this kind of pain. Suddenly, a gentle voice cuts through the darkness, calling her poor Daphne. It speaks of her wounded soul, of the feeling of an arrow lodged in her heart. She recognizes the voice. It is Callisto. She asks if Daphne wants to escape, suggesting her father might hide her in a secluded valley, a place untouched by the sun. Callisto's voice echoes through the dark, reminding Daphne that even the underworld is barred to her. The truth settles heavily. She has never had a choice. Floating upside down in the silent water, Daphne's emerald eyes are wide with dawning horror. What can she do? Return to Artemis's forest and share Callisto's tragic fate? An image of the serene, silver goddess appears, a stark contrast to the burning gold of Phoebus Apollo, a possessive smirk on his lips. Her body plummets into a blinding white light, caught between two impossible futures. Daphne's eyelids flutter open, her senses awakening to an unfamiliar, sun-drenched opulence. She finds herself in a warm marble bath, the water shimmering around her. A gentle voice murmurs that she has finally woken. It is Phoebus Apollo, holding her from behind, his golden presence radiating an almost oppressive heat. He remarks on her deep sleep, his sapphire eyes filled with a soft intensity as he asks about her dreams. His hand finds hers beneath the water, his fingers lacing through hers as he pulls her into a stifling, close embrace. Daphne turns her face away, her voice a fragile whisper. "I want to be alone, Lord Phoebus." Phoebus Apollo pauses, then agrees, his voice soft. He acknowledges that she needs rest after her grueling journey through the forest. He will grant her wish for solitude, he says, but she is too weak to be left completely on her own. He will send a handmaiden. Leaning in, his lips brush against her shoulder, a final, warm touch. "Rest well, Daphne," he murmurs, before rising from the water and stepping onto the cool marble floor. Phoebus Apollo stands alone in the vast, sunlit hall, his clothes still damp from the bath. He clenches his jaw, a pained expression on his face as he recalls Daphne's coldness. He finds himself wishing she would glare at him with those thorny eyes like before. At least when he faced her overt hatred, he did not feel this profound emptiness. He opens the grand doors, his shadow stretching across the floor. "But you act as if I mean nothing at all," he thinks, his voice laced with despair. A single tear escapes, tracing a path down his golden cheek. This, he realizes, is her retaliation, a cruelty unlike any other. A new day breaks, its golden light washing over the grand temple. Phoebus Apollo pauses, his thoughts consumed by Daphne. After their last encounter, she has not stepped outside, remaining secluded for countless days. The once obvious resentment in her eyes has vanished, replaced with a quiet stillness that unnerves him. Standing before her ornate door, he feels a strange anxiety taking root. This sudden, drastic shift in her behavior is more unsettling than her previous anger. He realizes with a quiet frustration, "Daphne, I still do not know you very well." With so many questions swirling in his mind, Phoebus Apollo finally opens the door. "I am back, Daphne," he announces, his voice echoing in the grand room. She stands on a balcony, silhouetted against the warm, golden sunset. He watches her, thinking she looks impossibly fragile, as if she might disappear at any moment. A quiet helplessness washes over him. It feels like no matter what he does, he cannot truly reach her. Daphne turns slowly, her emerald eyes meeting his. She offers a calm, unexpected greeting. "Welcome back, Phoebus." Her presence feels so faint, so ethereal, leaving him frozen in surprise. In the quiet, moonlit chamber, Phoebus Apollo kneels before Daphne. He gently bathes her foot, his touch surprisingly warm as he explains he was worried, having heard she had done nothing but sleep. A shadow of concern crosses his face, worried he might have troubled her. Daphne's voice is steady, almost distant, as she insists it was what she wanted and that she felt no discomfort. He looks up, his gaze intense, unable to believe her. He calls it a sweet little lie, wondering if she says it just to spare his feelings. Her cool response cuts through his fantasy. "That cannot be it, Phoebus. You know far too well what pleases you." Daphne's voice remains chillingly calm. She questions how she could possibly lie to the god of truth, reminding him of the consequences she faced that day. His hand freezes, then tightens around her ankle, stopping his movements. He looks down, a shadow crossing his face as he tries to explain himself. He insists he never intended to cause her such sorrow, calling the thought unthinkable. Before he can continue, she cuts him off, speaking his name. Phoebus. She clarifies that she was not seeking an apology, only making it clear that she knows her place. Her hand moves swiftly, turning his face away in a gesture of undeniable rejection. Her words are a cold counterpoint to the room's warmth. "You always take such devoted care of me, Phoebus," she says, a slight, knowing smile on her lips. "That is why my face looks so bright, right?" Phoebus Apollo's brilliant blue eyes narrow. He leans closer, his voice low as he demands to see for himself if she is truly well. His gaze travels down, and he remarks on the subtle evidence of her discomfort, dismissing her previous claims. From now on, he will doubt her words. He covers his face, whispering that if he had known she wished for this, he never would have claimed her. Phoebus Apollo tells Daphne to rest, promising to come if she calls. "No, really, Phoebus," she insists, her voice steady. "I am perfectly fine." She claims she has long forgotten what discomfort feels like. Leaning in close, her dark hair framing her face against his golden glow, she murmurs for him not to worry about that day. He should only remember holding her close until the dawn. Her words paint a vivid picture, one that makes the heat rise in his cheeks as he recalls their shared moments, his expression shifting into a silent, heated trance. Phoebus Apollo's mind swirls with contradictions. He recalls the intense way she reacts whenever he is near her, a pattern that has held firm since that day. Her slender hands, once so distant, now reach for him. Her lips part to call his name before their connection deepens. Despite all this, he sees a face devoid of affection, which only makes his own heart tremble with agonizing desire. "Daphne, I want to know," he thinks desperately, his mind flashing back to the moonlit sky at his sister's palace. He must find out if a single fragment of her past admiration remains. Phoebus Apollo holds Daphne close, his hand possessively cupping her throat as a searing question burns through his mind. He wonders if breaking this fragile shell might reveal the woman who once loved him. To him, she is his beloved green light, wandering lost in a vast forest. A profound sorrow fills him as his piercing blue eyes fixate on her. He is a man who can never again meet the nymph he so desperately yearns for, and the thought fills him with a deep, consuming ache. In a sun-drenched room, Daphne sleeps, her rest stretching from midday into the deep violet of evening. She stirs slightly, her dark lashes fluttering before her green eyes blink open. A soft, disembodied voice seems to drift from a dream, asking if her rest was pleasant. Reality floods her senses. Phoebus Apollo lies next to her, his brilliant golden hair fanning across the pillows. He is impossibly close, his gaze intense. "I told the nymphs not to wake you," he says softly, "but I had no idea you would be dreaming so deeply." Phoebus Apollo's voice is a low murmur against her hair, confessing that her dreams make him jealous. He holds her close, his warmth a suffocating blanket as he mentions his worry. She refused to eat again and grows thinner by the day. He asks if she liked the gifts he prepared, listing the divine treasures he gathered: pearls from Poseidon's waves, olives from Athena's tree, and a bow forged by Hephaestus. But his blue eyes narrow with frustration. Looking at her cold, distant expression, he sighs, realizing that nothing was able to sway her heart. Phoebus Apollo's frustration simmers, his golden hair framing a possessive gaze. He laments how difficult it is just to hear her voice, then asks Daphne to tell him about her dream. He presses closer, his voice a low whisper, confessing his jealousy and his desperate need to know everything inside her head. Daphne's voice finally breaks the silence. She tells him she has not seen her father. Instead, she has the same dream over and over, a dream of returning home. She describes a peaceful, sun-drenched valley, a place that may seem insignificant to a god, but to her, is incredibly beautiful. Phoebus Apollo's intense gaze softens, and he assures her that her birthplace must be as beautiful as she is. He asks what happened next. Daphne explains that in her dream, she walks upstream, finding joy even in the struggle. Her face, framed by sun-drenched sunflowers in the memory, turns wistful as she recalls her mother's wisdom. The anticipation of meeting someone, she was told, can be the most heart-pounding part, a promise that one day, she would feel a love that was truly worth the long wait. Daphne recalls her mother's lifelong wait, a devotion she now realizes was fueled by an unshakable hope. She turns her gaze to Phoebus Apollo, confessing that she never understood such profound longing until the first moment she saw him. The sun god freezes, his intense blue eyes widening as her words register. A heavy silence fills the room. He begins to utter her name, but her own thoughts spiral into a desperate wish to wake from this suffocating dream. As his hand touches her shoulder, he offers a simple, absolute solution. We just have to get married. Phoebus Apollo leans closer, his voice a soft promise. If they wed, he explains, the forest will open, and her father will be able to reach them. He assures her that once she has eternal life, even his sister's discipline will be meaningless. His blue eyes burn with intensity, a gentle smile playing on his lips as he begs her to marry him. But to Daphne, his proposal is a fate worse than fading away. Her mind spirals, lost in a vast, dark forest. Something is deeply wrong, as if she is trapped in an endless, incomprehensible dream. A fragile whisper escapes Daphne's lips, her voice heavy with a despair she can no longer comprehend. She confesses to Phoebus Apollo that even she does not understand the source of her own deep loathing for him. A single tear slips down her cheek as she pleads, asking when he will finally grow tired of her so she can wake from this suffocating dream. His fingers tighten on her shoulder, a possessive anchor in her haze of misery. Phoebus Apollo's voice is low and absolute as he shatters her only hope. That will never happen. Phoebus Apollo pulls her into an embrace, his golden hair cascading around her. Tears stream from Daphne's eyes as she begs him to stop laughing at her, to save her from this waking nightmare. But he denies it, his gaze softening with an overwhelming adoration. He tells her she is his joy, his only sorrow, and a misfortune he has never known. While she is trapped in a dream she longs to escape, his voice trembles with devotion as he declares that, to him, she is a dream from which he never wants to wake. Phoebus Apollo leans over Daphne, his golden hair cascading around her as he refutes her fears. He promises that her fate will be different, whispering that he will never get tired of her or cast her aside. Tears well in Daphne's eyes, her expression a mask of quiet dread. He continues, laying out his vision of their future together, their union, an heir she will give him, and a throne by his side. His voice is low and absolute as he declares this an unchangeable destiny. His hand clenches into a fist, sealing his suffocating vow. Phoebus Apollo's golden eyes burn with unwavering conviction as he looks down at Daphne. He takes her hand, his own wrapping around hers in a gentle yet inescapable hold. He promises her eternal devotion, a vow he swears he will never betray. A faint, possessive smile touches his lips as he leans closer. His affection will outlast everything, he declares, persisting even if his divine light as the sun itself were ever extinguished. The air grows thick with a suffocating warmth, trapping her within his solemn, absolute words. Lying beneath him, Daphne's voice is a fragile whisper as she addresses Phoebus Apollo. She reminds him that she knows the nature of gods like him. Her green eyes, wide with a mixture of defiance and dread, hold his intense gaze. She predicts that just as his affection appeared so suddenly, it will fade just as quickly, and he will eventually abandon her. "Do you remember the Queen of Thebes?" she asks, her question hanging like a sharp blade in the heated air between them, a reminder of past divine cruelty. A faint smile touches Phoebus Apollo's lips as he confirms that he does. In fact, remember, the world seems to dissolve into a cosmic expanse, where a single hourglass hangs suspended among the stars, its golden sand beginning to fall. It is an ancient story Daphne has summoned, the tale of his own mother, Leto. Cast out and alone, she wandered the world before giving birth to twins on a desolate island. Despite a cruel curse, the infants glowed with their own brilliant light, a boy with golden hair and a girl with silver. The twins ascend to godhood, destined to illuminate the world with their own distinct lights, one with a golden lyre of the sun, the other with a silver bow of the moon. Phoebus Apollo's voice continues, explaining how this ancient tale leads to tragedy, born from a mortal queen's arrogance. In her opulent court, Queen Niobe of Thebes, blessed with 7 sons and 7 daughters, looks down on the world. She cannot comprehend the struggles of his mother, Leto, and scorns the goddess for having only 2 children. This pride festers, until she demands the people worship her instead, for a single day. In her foolish pride, Queen Niobe orders the festival for the goddess stopped, an unbearable insult born of arrogance. The warmth of the room seems to intensify as Daphne leans closer to Phoebus Apollo, her voice a low murmur. She asks what he did in response to his mother's plea, her green eyes locking onto his. A challenging glint appears as she wonders if such a mortal affair has been forgotten. "Even if you have," she says, her hand covering his. "I remember." A slight tremor runs through him at her touch. Daphne's question cuts through the charged air. You struck down Niobe's sons with your arrows, did you not? A flicker of memory crosses Phoebus Apollo's radiant face. He recalls the glint of his golden bow and the swift, silent answer to his mother's pain. The sons of Thebes fell, and their father, the king, succumbed to his grief soon after. But the queen's pride remained. He remembers his sister, Artemis, taking aim under the cold moon, her own silver arrows finding their marks until 6 daughters had been claimed by Shadow. A chill enters the warm air as Daphne's voice sharpens, questioning the merciless nature of the gods. The memory flashes, cold and stark. A queen's foolish pride paid for with arrows under a dark sky. Niobe lost everything, forced to watch as her children fell one by one. The story ends with a statue, a mother frozen in stone, forever weeping in the rain over her lost family. Phoebus Apollo's brilliant blue eye widens, the vivid memory causing a bead of sweat to form. Daphne presses, have you truly forgotten about her? A tragic memory surfaces, a story of a prideful queen who lost everything. Under a sky heavy with rain, a statue weeps, cradling a small form, forever surrounded by her fallen loved ones. A single tear escapes Apollo's eye. He admits he remembers the tale, but tells Daphne it has nothing to do with her. His grip tightens on her arm as he dismisses the departed as mere mortals. Kneeling before her on a moonlit balcony, he declares she is his queen and lifelong companion, commanding her never to compare herself to them. Phoebus Apollo leans closer, his voice a low, urgent murmur. He asks what it will take for her to finally trust him, calling her rejection the one mystery in the world he cannot solve. Kneeling before him, Daphne's voice is hollow as she declares that no such method exists. His hand finds her chin, tilting her tear-streaked face up to meet his intense gaze. She admits that nothing can ever reverse her hatred for him. With a final, crushing whisper, she reveals that she now resents herself even more for ever having loved him at all. Daphne's confession shatters the fragile world Phoebus Apollo has built. The truth is finally revealed, and his perfect facade cracks under the weight of her words. He whispers her name, his voice filled with a hollow ache. His strength gives out, and he collapses forward, burying his golden head in her lap, as if seeking refuge from a pain he cannot comprehend. From the doorway, the scene is a somber painting against the rainy night. Since that moment, he has not visited her. A month, maybe more, has passed in quiet solitude. Whispers float through the grand halls, speculating that Lord Phoebus has finally grown tired of Daphne, that his patience has run out. Alone in her vast, quiet room, she blinks slowly, the thoughts settling like dust. She has been abandoned. A bitter acceptance dawns. He acted as if it were some grand love, but for a god, it ended so easily. Her hand tightens on the railing. She cannot stay here any longer. One day, finding a sliver of her old strength, she prepares to leave this gilded cage behind. With unwavering resolve, Daphne stands ready beside a white horse. Her plan is simple: flee to her father's river, stay hidden, and build a new life. This is her one chance for freedom. She pushes the door to her chambers, but the sight inside makes her freeze. Her sandals come to a sudden halt on the cool, patterned floor. The grand balcony doors are thrown wide open, bathing the entire room in the fiery, golden glow of the sun. A warmth she was not expecting fills the air, feeling less like comfort and more like a cage. Daphne's breath catches in her throat. Why did she come back? She wonders if that was truly her last chance. All strength drains from her body, and she slides down the wall, collapsing onto the cold floor in a heap. Her hands clench the fabric of her dress, her mind racing. This is a prison, one she cannot escape from within his shadow. After struggling so hard to get away, why does she falter now? She realizes it might be the old dreams, the visions of a goddess's blue palace, a sanctuary she can never return to. A dream, or perhaps a memory, surfaces. She walks through a field, the dewy grass cool against her legs. At the end of her search, she faces a brilliant golden light, a radiance unlike anything she has ever known. It is Phoebus Apollo, his hair flowing against the bright blue sky. She remembers how a part of her desperately wanted to cling to that light. Back in the cold room, she clutches her chest. She thought she had forgotten it all, that only disgust remained. A single tear falls, a hot drop against her skin. Is this why she could not leave? Because even in her dreams, she cannot forget? A broken sob escapes her lips as she collapses completely. A memory surfaces, a time when meeting his eyes felt like holding the entire world in her hands. She wonders what this bitter hatred is that now twists in her heart. A golden warmth spreads through her mind. Phoebus Apollo, his voice soft and concerned. He asks if she is in pain, dismissing her sorrow as a bad dream. It is all right now, Daphne. His memory whispers, a soothing balm repeating her name like a prayer. The phantom comfort shatters, leaving her on the cold floor, weeping for a love she was forced to forget. Gasping for air, Daphne stumbles through the dimly lit room, her strength finally giving out as she collapses to her knees. She desperately tells herself to calm down, but the words are hollow. I cannot keep wasting time like this, she thinks, her hands trembling. It has been over a month since she was confined here, a dark room without even a sliver of moonlight. She recognizes that anyone's heart would weaken in such isolation. This creeping loneliness feels like a weakness, an indulgent emotion eating away at her resolve. Daphne's shoulders slump as she stares at her hands. This creeping loneliness must be the cause of her weakness. If it is not, she thinks, then she must be truly losing her mind. As evening approaches, the world outside turns a deep, starry blue. A door creaks open. Stepping into the hall, she tells herself that he will not come anymore. But she freezes, realizing the only one wavering is her. A tear slips down her cheek. Perhaps this is his real curse, this chilling sense of undeserved mercy bestowed upon a mere toy. This curse haunts her, a twisting memory of a past where she once loved him in her dreams. Now, in this suffocating reality where only his eyes meet hers, she feels herself fading away, choking on solitude. The words of the other nymphs echo in her mind. They could never understand her revulsion, seeing only an arrogant girl who was ungrateful for a god's attention. They are beings who cannot endure without adoring Phoebus. As she walks through a lonely, candlelit hall, she remembers a question one of them once asked her. Her footsteps echo in the vast, empty hall as the sharp words of another nymph burn in her memory, calling her arrogant. A woman has never held any meaning for him, the voice insists, yet Daphne once adored him from afar. She used to despair over his indifference, feeling ecstatic if his gaze merely fell upon her for a moment. So why do you refuse to acknowledge him now? The memory scoffs. How dare you oppose the sun? As a lone candle melts away, a single thought consumes her. Why on earth would she suffer from an unrequited love? A sudden thought makes Daphne pause. He is in love? She scoffs at the idea, her hand clenching the fabric of her dress in a tight fist. That is all a lie. With a surge of emotion, she decides she cannot be shaken any longer. Daphne breaks into a run, her sandals slapping against the cold stone of the moonlit colonnade. She pants for breath, her mind racing. The god of oracles loving her? It is nothing more than a cruel curiosity, like a child's passing interest in a toy. The only truth is the hatred she feels. Daphne pants for breath, her desperate escape cut short by a sudden, oppressive warmth. A blinding golden light envelopes her as Phoebus Apollo materializes just behind, his radiant form leaning in. He whispers her name, a low hum that vibrates through her very being. Daphne, he breathes, his voice manifesting as a swarm of glowing butterflies that flutter around them. You are my joy. Trapped and surrounded by the golden insects, Daphne stands frozen. All the fight drains from her as she lowers her head, a final, defeated sigh escaping her lips. He has found her. Her fingers dig into the fabric of her dress, the material bunching in her fists. This is what she once craved so badly. The thought brings a fresh wave of tears, her face contorting into a pained, relieved smile as she remembers the moment she believed she was finally discarded, just like all the other nymphs before her. He had treated her unrequited love as a weakness, an amusing game. There is no way she could be his joy now. Sinking to the cold stone floor, a single question echoes in her mind. But why? A single tear escapes Daphne's eye, splashing onto the cold stone. A soft voice breaks the silence with a sigh. Oh dear. Phoebus Apollo materializes in a blinding, warm light, surrounded by golden flowers. He notes that he gave her space, and yet she was crying again. He wonders aloud what kind of nightmare she must have had. Kneeling before her, his radiant form overpowering the darkness, he gently tilts her chin up. Daphne, he says, his voice a low hum, won't you tell me? Phoebus Apollo's voice is a soft murmur. He looks down at Daphne, his blue eyes filled with a gentle concern as he notes her tears. He assumes she must have had a terrible nightmare. You do not have to worry anymore, he promises, leaning closer. I will chase those dreams away. His hand reaches out, his thumb gently brushing a tear from her cheek. Daphne's wide green eyes well up with a silent terror. In a swift, sudden movement, his gentle touch becomes a firm grip, his hand curling around her throat as he pulls her closer. A wave of regret washes over Phoebus Apollo's features as he kneels before Daphne. "I am sorry," he murmurs, his voice heavy. "I always seem to make you cry." He confesses that her refusal to eat for 5 days has left him so distressed he cannot focus. He acknowledges her hatred, how she must find his presence, his voice, and even his slightest touch unbearable. Still, he begs her to eat, insisting there is nothing on earth he cannot obtain for her. From the ground, Daphne's voice is a faint whisper. "Why?" she asks. "Why show mercy to a woman who resents the gods?" Daphne interprets his words as a final pity, an impossible curse. Rising to her feet, she turns away, declaring she will leave and hide where even his shadow cannot reach. "No." Phoebus Apollo's voice is firm as he stands. He tells her he is the master of this place, promising he will only enter with her permission. But the promise hangs in the air for only a moment before he moves, pulling her hand and drawing her close against him. His voice is a low murmur, confessing she is his greenery, his only thought. His voice is a low murmur against her skin, confessing all he desires is to see her sleeping peacefully. The world seems to fade into a tranquil night sky, but when Daphne's eyes snap open, the quiet is shattered by revulsion. She thinks he only shows his shameless face now that she is at the edge of her endurance, like a man feeling guilty for a pet he neglected. He supports her weak frame, refusing her demand to be left alone. He offers her anything, but she turns away, unwilling to eat. "It has been 5 days," Phoebus Apollo insists. His words echo in the moonlit chamber. "This is all for your sake." His foot presses gently against hers on the cool stone, a silent command for her to stay. Daphne's eyes blaze with fury as she looks up at him. "For my sake?" she repeats, her voice laced with disbelief. She recounts every plea he has ignored, to be left alone, to be sent to Artemis, to be returned to her father, and asks if he ever granted a single one. She tells him she recognizes affection, even when it is wrapped in falsehoods. But her gaze hardens as she asks him the real question, her voice dropping to a low, cutting whisper. "Do you not simply miss the warmth of having her in your chambers?" Her accusation hangs in the stifling air. That was her only use to him, was it not? Phoebus Apollo's sapphire eyes widen, a single drop of sweat tracing his temple. He can only manage to breathe her name. Suddenly, he surges forward, pulling her into a desperate, crushing embrace. His warmth envelopes her, his golden hair spilling over her shoulders as he holds her tight. But for Daphne, it is not a comfort. To her, a god is just a man, masking his desires as love. He holds her close, silencing her with a closeness that feels like a cage. Her voice cuts through the heat of his embrace, mocking his words. "I am special. This is all for me." Her hand presses against his chest, a fragile defense as she compares him to all the others who came before. "Prove it," she demands, her eyes daring him. "Prove that you are different." In the silent chaos of her mind, she begs him to fail. She needs him to show her that she is just a possession, a thing to be used. Only then can this suffocating hatred finally be justified, burning away any lingering warmth. His challenge hangs in the charged air. Phoebus Apollo stumbles backward, overwhelmed, his golden hair fanning out as the cool stone of the balcony floor meets his shoulders. In a single, fluid motion, Daphne is over him, her shadow eclipsing the moonlight. Her eyes, cold and steady, lock onto his. "Lord Phoebus," she whispers, her voice cutting through the sudden heat rising between them. "If your vow is truly pure." He can only gaze up at her, breathless and undone, his world narrowing to her face. "Then prove it to me." In the quiet of the grand chamber, Phoebus Apollo carries Daphne across the room, his movements careful as he gently lays her down. Surrounded by soft linens, she looks up at him, her gaze steady and unwavering. She speaks, her voice cutting through the heavy silence, asking him if his vow is truly as pure as he claims. His breath hitches, and his intense sapphire eyes widen in surprise. Strands of his brilliant golden hair fall across his face as he leans over her, caught entirely in the moment. Her challenge hangs in the heated air between them. "Then prove it to me." The heat between them is a living thing, thick and overwhelming. Daphne's delicate hand rests against the warmth of Phoebus Apollo's chest, a silent, daring challenge. Her voice is low as she presses her point, asking why he will not be honest with her now. "You just," love this act regardless of who it is with, do you not? The accusation lands, sharp and piercing. The god's breath catches in his throat. Every line of his body goes tense, his radiant form frozen by her audacity. The steady rhythm of his heart pounds against her palm. No, that is not it, Daphne. His voice is strained. He pulls back, putting space between them on the large bed. Gazing at the starry sky, he speaks with desperate sincerity, explaining that dawn is near and he has little time to earn her trust. He vows that she is incomparable, that no woman, goddess or mortal, could ever replace her. He promises he will not hold her until she has recovered her strength and truly desires it. A soft, dismissive laugh escapes Daphne as she covers her mouth. When I truly want it, you say? She muses. Phoebus Apollo's brilliant sapphire eyes widen, his expression frozen in stunned silence. Her mockery lands like a physical blow. Daphne's voice is pure ice as she leans over Phoebus Apollo, a cold smile playing on her lips. She informs him she will never desire what he offers, not as long as she lives. She questions the truth of a god who has never once hidden his overwhelming want for her. Her fingers trail down his chest, a deliberate provocation against his heated skin. A sharp breath hitches in his throat. When her touch ventures lower, his control shatters. He grabs her wrist, his voice tight with desperation. Daphne, stop. Stop this. Her hand moves from his wrist, fingers pressing into him as she breaks his hold. I wonder when you will seek me out next, she muses, her voice a chilling whisper. Phoebus Apollo's breath hitches, his golden hair fanned out on the sheets. With a cold, detached gaze, she continues her taunts. Tomorrow? Or perhaps the next full moon. Stop, he pleads, his body tense under her touch. Daphne leans over him, her dark hair a stark contrast to his radiance. She offers one last, chilling suggestion. Perhaps it will be after she has already journeyed to the realm of shadows. Her finger touches his lip, and his blue eyes widen in shock. The god is left speechless, a single word escaping him. What? Phoebus Apollo's blue eyes burn with a sudden, desperate fire. You will never cross into that realm, he vows, his voice tight with an emotion that cracks his divine composure. I will never allow that to happen. A dangerous glint appears in Daphne's eyes. She leans closer, her voice a low challenge. Then, Lord Phoebus, show me your sincerity. Before he can answer, she surges forward. Her lips press against his, a fiery connection that steals the air from his lungs. His hand instinctively clutches the fabric beneath him, knuckles white as the overwhelming warmth floods his senses. But as quickly as it began, it is over. She pulls back and vanishes, leaving only the soft creak of a distant door and the god, breathless and stunned, in her wake. Daphne's voice is a low, challenging whisper, asking if he truly wants to push her away. Phoebus Apollo lies beneath her, his radiant composure shattered. A feverish heat rises to his cheeks as he breathes heavily, completely overwhelmed by her proximity. Daphne, he pleads, his voice strained, stop this now. He worries she will be hurt, begging her not to overdo it. A dark, amused glint appears in her green eyes as she watches him unravel. A soft, oh my escapes her lips, savoring his helpless concern. Daphne leans closer, her voice a velvet whisper as she notes how lovably he calls her name. Lord Phoebus, she murmurs. When will you be willing to claim me, then? A strangled sound escapes him as she offers herself, but she quickly turns the tables, declaring that the god of truth must pay the price for his lies. He gasps her name, pleading for her to stop. She continues to press, asking if his resistance is just another lie. Phoebus Apollo's hand trembles in the air as he struggles for composure, the heat overwhelming him. He thinks desperately that at this rate, it will not feel like a penalty at all. In the quiet aftermath, the air feels thick and warm. Phoebus Apollo holds Daphne close, his brilliant golden hair spilling over her deep green locks. He breathes heavily, his cheeks flushed with an emotion that overwhelms him. Whispering her name, he gently asks why she will not eat, his voice filled with a strange tenderness as he notes how light she feels in his arms. Pressed against the god's radiant warmth, Daphne's eyes are wide open, her green gaze distant and sharp. As he is lost in his passion, her mind is a storm of silent calculation. She wonders, what on earth can I do for you? The sharp clang of a hammer echoes through a fiery forge. Amidst the heat and scattered weapons, the god Hephaestus works, his back to a small, winged figure. Eros sits hunched over, looking troubled. Noticing his frequent visits, Hephaestus asks if something is wrong. Eros hesitates, then speaks of a nymph he saw, crying as she wandered through the forest. "Lord Hephaestus," he asks, his voice heavy, "what should one do if they cannot undo a mistake they have made?" A crescent moon reflects in an ornate mirror as Hephaestus thoughtfully replies. Hephaestus urges Eros to tell him everything, remarking that it is the hour of confession for all wrongdoers. The scene shifts to the serene, moonlit quiet of Artemis's forest. Eros steps carefully into the forbidden woods, clutching a new bough. He was sent by the mischievous Phoebus Apollo, and though he knows he should not be here, there is no turning back. After confirming no one is around, he continues his mission, but a sudden rustle in the leaves sends him scrambling in terror, crying out an apology to Lady Artemis. Eros breathes a sigh of relief, realizing the noise was only a small squirrel. Just as he relaxes, a soft voice cuts through the silent woods, asking what he is doing here. His blood runs cold. A brilliant arrow of divine light erupts from the darkness, striking the tree right beside his head with terrifying force. He turns to see Lady Artemis, her silver gaze narrowed and her glowing bow still raised. She remarks that the forest had grown too quiet, alerting her to a two-legged beast that had crawled into her domain. A new figure appears with a nervous laugh, waving his hands. Artemis demands to know what brings Hermes to her woods. Is he a messenger for Zeus again? He quickly denies it, explaining he has come on behalf of Lord Phoebus. At the sound of her brother's name, the air grows still and cold. Hermes presents a masterfully crafted bow, a gift from Phoebus. He speaks of their famous sibling bond, recalling how the sun and moon of Olympus once shone together, and questions why they must now turn their backs on each other forever. Hermes continues his plea, explaining that since Lord Phoebus wishes to restore his relationship with his sister, it would be best to reconcile before their feelings drift further apart. Before he can finish, the air explodes with movement. A volley of arrows slices through the forest, pinning the messenger god firmly to the ground. One sharp tip stops just beside his cheek. His eyes widen in pure terror as he sees Artemis's huntresses aiming from the surrounding trees. Artemis's voice is dangerously quiet. "Reconcile?" she asks, her silver gaze burning with fury. "How dare you mention reconciliation to my face?" Artemis's voice drips with chilling calm as she reminds Hermes exactly whose land he stands on. She turns away, frustrated that her sacred ground has been violated twice in such a short time, feeling she has been taken for a fool. Regretting not making a more severe example of the last trespasser, she reluctantly accepts the bow. She then issues a final, unbreakable command for the arrogant Apollo. If he truly wishes to mend their relationship, she declares, he must bring that girl before her. A single green leaf held between her fingers punctuates her cold resolve. The single green leaf, a token of Artemis's cold command, drifts through the air. Far away, at the base of a desolate mountain, an amused observer watches an unexpected guest arrive. Phoebus Apollo walks the harsh, rocky ground, his divine nature a stark contrast to the barren landscape. The unseen watcher finds this amusing, wondering what truth the sun god seeks that would cause him to dim his own brilliance. Apollo lifts his head, his golden hair blazing and his gaze filled with unwavering purpose, a warm, powerful aura radiating from him. An ethereal voice chuckles, observing an unexpected guest standing at the foot of the mountain. Phoebus Apollo strides across the desolate, rocky ground, his presence radiating a powerful, solar warmth. The unseen observer finds this amusing, wondering what truth the god seeks by suppressing his radiant intellect to appear more human. As his name echoes in the air, Apollo pauses and looks up. "Mother, Leto," he says, his voice steady. From the heavens, a silver-haired goddess smiles down, her gaze serene as she watches her son's journey unfold below. Under the vast night sky, Phoebus Apollo scales the treacherous mountain, having set aside his divine power for the climb. His red cloak billows as he pulls himself up the sheer rock face, driven by a singular purpose. Suddenly, a foothold splinters under his weight, the pieces falling into the dark chasm below. He catches himself, breathing heavily as a bead of sweat traces his temple. "Goodness," he murmurs, feeling like a mortal being put to the test. He wonders if this exhaustion is from the summit's approach or the strange vulnerability of a human body. As Phoebus Apollo reaches the summit, the fog clouding his thoughts begins to lift. He feels certain a hidden truth lies here, something beyond his own divine reason. How else could Daphne's heart have turned so cold overnight? He remembers her once adoring eyes, now turned sorrowful, and her hands pushing him away when they should be holding him. This rejection, he concludes, cannot be her true feeling. In the light of a new day, he walks through sunlit ruins, his red cloak billowing as he approaches a great, vine-covered door. Phoebus Apollo's gaze is heavy as he looks upon the temple. It has been a long time since I last visited, he thinks to himself. The colossal stone doors groan open, splitting the darkness with a blinding white light that spills from within. He enters a sacred space, now marked by the passage of time. He walks past crumbling pillars, noting that while the place is a ruin compared to his own palace, its peerless beauty remains. A gentle voice agrees, acknowledging that its glory has not faded. A sense of relief washes over him as he calls out, "Lady Themis." A soft voice calls him my Pythian. Phoebus Apollo recognizes the new title from mortals, proof she still pays attention to the world. Themis explains his recent glory was too loud to ignore. As she steps closer, she reminds him that the power of the oracle and the glory of enlightenment were originally hers. He closes the distance between them, pulling her into a deep, familiar embrace. With his eyes closed, he rests his head against her. She murmurs that his inner thoughts are completely clear to her. "Your bad habit of peeking into others' hearts remains," he says softly. She counters, asking if perhaps he is just clumsy at hiding his feelings, especially from her. "You are a mess," she observes, "coming to find me like this." Her fingers gently brush Phoebus Apollo's cheek as he looks at her with heavy eyes. He asks if Lady Themis can see everything, how foolish he is, and the thing that is currently blinding him. She remarks that he is a funny sight, reminding him of a time he boasted her teachings taught him all he needed to know. He admits he is ashamed of his current state, unable to even guess the source of his confusion. The world dissolves into a cosmic vista, where he stands as a small, golden figure in her divine palm, pleading, "Your disciple seeks your wisdom." Themis leans close to Phoebus Apollo, her voice a low murmur. She tells him that seeking help only after making a mess of things makes him just like his father. Her hand rests over his heart as she observes a blind devotion that does not suit his blunt nature. He turns away, insisting this feeling is separate from his personality. If there is a problem, he states, it is simply that he loves too much. Her fingers gently brush a lock of his golden hair as she urges him to remember everything he has chosen to disregard. Themis questions him about his mother and his grand purpose, but Phoebus Apollo's expression is rigid. He states his reason for being is a necessity that will always exist above love. She cautions him that others have spoken with such certainty in the past. An image of a bitten apple gleams, a portent he cannot yet grasp. She tells him that someday, he will have no choice but to realize the truth. His condition, she explains, is an illness brought on by a boy god's mischief. Now that he knows the cause, he can cure it. With a piercing, silver gaze, she points forward, commanding him to heal himself and reclaim the dignity of the sun, just like a disciple of hers should. In a vivid memory, a voice explains that Phoebus Apollo's condition is merely an illness, a prank from a boy god. The voice insists that with the cause known, the cure should be simple. The memory shifts, and Artemis appears, her silver eyes piercing and resolute. She commands him to cure it and reclaim the dignity of the sun, reminding him of his duty as her disciple. Back in the present, Phoebus Apollo's expression hardens. "I see," he says, a chilling understanding dawning in his sapphire eyes. "To think that what has been eating away at me was just that." A memory of Lady Themis unfolds, her silver hair framing a knowing smile as a bird lands gently on her finger. She tells Phoebus Apollo that while it seems like a childish trick, love has always been something of a joke. But, she adds, there is one thing he missed that day. Phoebus clutches his chest, a warmth spreading through him as her voice explains that it is love itself that now has him by the throat. She reminds him his old self would have simply laughed it off. He bows deeply, thanking her as dawn approaches. The memory of Lady Themis continues. Her hand rests near Phoebus Apollo's heart as her voice explains the torment this love has caused him. She calls Eros's arrow a deep wound, one that no doctor can treat. But she reminds him that he, the god of medicine, is the only one with the power to cure his own disease. Only he can correct this inverted fate between reason and love. As the sun rises over ancient ruins, Phoebus Apollo's expression hardens. He dismisses her wisdom. "No, Lady Themis." A dangerous question forms in his mind. Must it truly be cured? Phoebus Apollo decides he does not want a cure. To him, this feeling is not an illness that started with an arrow. It began much earlier, with a burning curiosity so intense that even he, the god who knew all of creation's principles, could not look away. The memory fades to a dark, moonlit night. "Have you arrived, Lord Phoebus?" a soft voice asks. He stands in a clearing, his golden form radiant among the shadowed trees. His gaze finds one figure in the crowd, and a sudden vision flashes in his mind. Daphne, her dark hair spilling as she rests against him. His blue eyes sharpen, a subtle smile forming as he looks toward the window. Lying in bed under the soft moonlight, Phoebus Apollo recalls a scent. Grass, he thinks. The memory takes him back to a moonlit hall where a dark-haired nymph bows before him. He wonders if the captivating fragrance comes from her. She must be one of Artemis's attendants, but he cannot understand why he has never seen her before. Another's voice asks about his plans, but his focus remains on that memory. Back in the present, he reconsiders. No, it was not grass. It was a scent he had never encountered, like river water touched by sunlight or a newly sprouted seedling. The air shimmers with golden light. Daphne feels she is on the verge of a revelation, her thoughts drifting. Just a little more, she thinks. If I look just a little closer, I feel like I could figure it out. Her cheeks are flushed, her bow held loosely in her hand. The idle chatter of other nymphs about a hunting bet fades into nothing. A divine figure eclipses the sun. Phoebus Apollo stands before her, his presence radiating an overwhelming warmth. His long, golden hair cascades as his piercing blue eyes meet hers, and Daphne's breath catches. The world dissolves into a brilliant, golden haze, leaving only the divine figure before her. Lord Phoebus? Daphne breathes, her voice a hushed whisper. Drawn by an invisible force, she drifts across the sun-drenched field until she stands just behind him, mesmerized. A sudden jolt of awareness breaks the spell. Realizing how close she is, she flinches back with a start. "I apologize," she stammers, bowing her head. Flustered, she explains that she was simply returning from a hunt, her cheeks burning under his radiant presence. Daphne averts her eyes, stammering an apology for her disheveled state after the hunt. Phoebus Apollo's lips curl into a faint smile. "It is fine," he says, his voice like warm honey. "You are quite entertaining just as you are." The word catches her off guard. Before she can respond, he closes the distance between them. His hand gently lifts her chin, his fingers carefully plucking a tiny leaf from her hair. He holds it between them, his gaze piercing. For over a month, he has been curious. Now he wonders, is this it? Daphne's heart pounds against her ribs as the world melts into a golden haze. Phoebus Apollo leans impossibly close, his radiant aura warming her skin as his brilliant hair frames his face. He murmurs that he has been curious about something for over a month now, wondering aloud if this is it. His fingers gently graze a leaf near her chin. He continues, noting that hunters usually carry a grim scent. As his intense gaze locks with hers, he questions softly why she is so different, leaving Daphne breathless and captivated in the sudden, charged stillness. Her friends call out, breaking the spell and asking what she and Phoebus Apollo talked about. Flustered, Daphne insists it was nothing, her heart still hammering against her ribs. She watches him depart, clutching her chest as she wonders if it is possible for time to stop, quickly dismissing the thought as a foolish delusion. Elsewhere, Phoebus Apollo walks through the forest, trying to rationalize what he felt. He tells himself her scent is just grass, her hair is just black, nothing out of the ordinary. And yet, as he arrives before Artemis, he stands with his arms crossed, and a single name escapes his lips, Daphne. Apollo's hand tightens on his robes as he questions his own reaction. Artemis regards him with a puzzled look, asking what he means. He deflects, reminding her that she was the one who first asked about the hunter. Artemis praises Daphne's impressive skills, noting it would be a shame to lose her. She then recalls a past incident, one involving a girl who caught the eye of Zeus. Apollo's expression hardens as he scoffs, questioning if he is supposed to feel sympathy. His voice is cold as he declares he has no mercy for oath breakers. In the dark woods, a sandaled foot crushes a leaf on the forest floor. A voice muses that since hunting beasts has grown boring, a deer would be good for the next time. Later, Daphne has a dream. She is in a vast field of brilliant sunflowers under a clear blue sky. A quiet, warm breeze blows through the air. Phoebus Apollo rests with her, his head cradled in her lap as her fingers gently run through his dazzling golden hair. She smiles softly, feeling his affection carried on the wind, reaching her from the closest distance. Phoebus Apollo dreams. He pulls Daphne close, his arms wrapped around her as he leans into her warmth. It is a memory of a sweeter time, of a smile he had never seen before, meant only for him. But the dream shatters into a cold nightmare. Rain pours down as he holds her limp form, struck down by a cruel arrow. He feels her light fading away through his fingers, completely helpless. He can do nothing but hold her as everything fades to black. With a sharp gasp, Phoebus Apollo bolts upright, a single tear tracing a path down his cheek. He gasps for breath, golden hair falling over his face as he clutches the sheets. The same nightmare haunts him, a relentless torment that has followed him through countless seasons. He once thought it a curse, perhaps an arrow of his own making returning to strike him. But there is no time to writhe in the agonizing pain. Instead, a relentless curiosity for her continues to grow, a fire that consumes him. A memory surfaces, a calmer time, holding her hand under a clear sky. He looks at her, his voice soft. "Tell me your story, Daphne." The memory floods his senses, pushing back the lingering cold of his nightmare until it feels like a distant fiction. He remembers her warmth, the frantic, trembling pulse beneath his fingertips, and the light scent of fresh grass clinging to her. A deep blush spreads across Daphne's face as she meets his gaze, her wide eyes reflecting the forest. He leans in, a possessive fire in his own blue eyes. The thrill of hunting beasts has grown dull. A new, more captivating pursuit now holds his complete attention, and he has no intention of letting her go. Phoebus Apollo lounges on his throne, sunlight warming his skin as he idly considers his next pursuit. Perhaps a deer. His relaxed hand suddenly tightens into a fist as a bitter reality settles in. He remembers the frustrating distance he must keep, the space between his own golden hair and her dark, flowing locks. A possessive fire burns in his blue eyes, and a faint, knowing smile plays on his lips. She remains unchangingly, eternally out of his reach. She is Artemis's. Hey, thanks for watching this chapter breakdown on Manhwa Fury. I spent hours day and night cutting, scripting, and editing just for you to dive into the story with zero fluff. If you love this ride, smash that subscribe button and hit the bell so you don't miss the next epic recap. And while you're here, check out the video on screen now, or link below, for the next wild twist you won't believe. I'll see you in the next one. Fury out.